You want to go? Is that what you're talking? Good evening. I'd like to call our special council meeting for budget to order on Tuesday, March 3rd at 6 p.m. Mayor McNeil Smith, colleagues in the chamber, to my right, Councillor Duck, Councillor Duncan, Councillor Gurnett, to my left, Councillor Rentoul and Councillor O'Keefe. Councillor Novick will not be attending this evening's meeting. And good evening to members of staff across all departments here for our budget meeting this evening, and good evening to members of the public, both in the council chamber and to those who may be watching the live webcast or the meeting at another time. For those who are watching online, you will see a different camera angle or view this evening. Our regular camera is no longer working, and so a temporary solution has been put in place, and you may notice that the council is a reverse image from what you might normally see, but we are all here live. I will next turn to respectfully acknowledge that we are holding our meeting in the territory of the WSÁNEĆ people, the Tsawo't Nation, the Tsartlip Nation, the Pakwitcha Nation, Sakem Nation, and the Malahat Nation. And in turning to approval of the agenda, we only have one addition. We have additional correspondence received since the agenda was published last Thursday, and that was correspondence from Mr. David Cavally, and that is forming part of the agenda, and council has received that. With that, I would look for a motion to approve the agenda as amended. Councillor Duck.
Second.
Councillor Gurnett. Any further discussion? Seeing none, those in favor? That carries unanimous. Thank you. We're next turning to our regular public participation, where members of the public are invited to come forward to speak to council. We ask that you keep your remarks to 4 minutes, as per our regular policy, and to be fair to all speakers. This evening, given this is a special meeting for the budget, I would ask that all speakers coming forward tonight do speak to some aspect of the budget, and we welcome your remarks. So for first time, I'll ask if there are any speakers wishing to come forward this evening. Good evening.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Thank you for the opportunity to appear again, as I have several times over the years, on the issue of property tax increases and the impact that that has also on the business owners in Sydney who are tax collectors and not taxpayers. In the Olympic Games, as you may have noticed, there's a new ski event introduced this year for the first time, and it has skiers actually skiing uphill, climbing steps to get to the top and then ski down. In the discussion last week, the meeting I was last at, about councillor and mayor pay, I frankly think the council failed to exercise its fiduciary duty to the community by taking as the rationale for that increase, substantial increase, comparables in other councils. I only vote in this municipality. You can run for the council in Colwood or Victoria or whatever if you're attracted by the pay, but you have to be chosen by the residents of those municipalities. So in that sense, the comparables are irrelevant. It's your responsibility to set your pay and defend it. That's exactly what you should do. I have to say that apart from one expression of a changed circumstance, I heard no rationale for the increases that you've recommended, having been reminded by one member of council that your pay since 2014 had been subject to COLA. And now we come to the property tax meeting, and we're looking at numbers that I can hardly believe. I've spoken a few times to this council about inflation and the impact on municipal budgets. And one of the things that's always been brought up is, we don't understand, John. We have to buy concrete and rebar, and we deal in asphalt and stuff like that. Well, of course, you've got to make 100% allowance for inflation, for sure, of materials. But most of your budget, most of our budget, is staffing. And I find it distressing, in the least, and you're not alone, of course, that for the last, you name it, 15, since I've been here, but anyway, the last 15 or 20 years, where the inflation rate has been virtually 1, between 1 and 2, and population increase has been in the same range. It has changed. The town of Sydney and almost every other municipality in the region have raised taxes by an average of 200 to 300% of the inflation rate, and called them low increases. They were not. At no time, as far as I'm aware, during that period of time, did the town of Sydney decide to perhaps do an A-based review of a department in City Hall to see if, the history of whatever the function was and the way the services are being delivered and wherever the function was met current standards and could be subject to a lower cost option. And you haven't done it this year either. It's cost plus budgeting. Taxpayers are tired of having to ski uphill, as those Olympians had to do. And that is what we're doing. And yet, speaking as the chair of the Grumpy Taxpayers of Greater Victoria, every municipal council in this region has fantastic opportunities to explore other ways of delivering services by combining services with one or two of the 13 municipalities. At least try, and come back to the taxpayers and say, well, no, we really, you can see from the Sydney Fire Department to the North Saanich Fire Department, but we really need 2 chiefs. Sorry, Chief, this is nothing personal here at all. But in a city of 460,000 people, to have 18 fire chiefs is beyond a joke. The tax base that you live in is shrinking. The provincial government is changing tax laws. The federal government is changing tax laws. I think it's going to be harder and harder for municipalities to avoid, especially in this region, avoid the logical approach to see where there can be savings by combining delivery. No other city of 460,000 people on God's earth has 18 fire chiefs. You work in a very difficult space. We know that. Sydney's a fantastic place to live. It certainly is. But taxpayers can only ski uphill for so long. And I think that time has come. And I think as the board of directors of this community, the people to whom you deliver services and serve deserve a clear statement saying we have exhausted all possibilities of changing the shape of the way we deliver services to keep tax rate increases as low as possible. And I would suggest that when the budgets are presented, that, and you'll know this, Mr. Mayor, better than anybody sitting there, that don't just present what a $1,000 assessment looks like at a home. Put the business tax rate in there and the impact of the multiplier and the fact that that has to be collected from people who shop at Tanner's Books. We are tired of skiing uphill. It cannot go on. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Cholevin. I'll ask if there are any other speakers this evening. Not seeing any, I'll call third and last time. Seeing none, we'll close public participation. I may, Mr. Edwards, if you could just catch the microphone. So we are now turning to our main item this evening under 5A, which is the 2026 budget, and we will turn to Mr. Hisik, our Director of Finance, for a presentation and facilitating our discussion this evening. Good evening.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor. If you'll indulge me, I'll provide a small introduction, much shorter than last time, and then I would propose that we go through the budget and the components that we're used to going through. In this case, supplementals, capital, and then moving on to utilities. And of course, you have an option of perhaps changing the order if you would like to. But that's the way the presentation is currently organized. Give you a very brief recap of where we are, and then we'll consider the budget by the different areas I just outlined. This is part 2 of our 3-stage process that we're used to, and any decisions made tonight will be built into another iteration of the draft budget, which will be considered on Monday, March 16th, hopefully for final adoption. No secret by now that the draft financial plan starts out with a general tax increase of 12.4%, which includes several new budget items that have not yet been officially approved by council, some of which you have discretion over, some of which you may not. We'll cover what's included in some of those figures and identify some areas that we might focus on if we choose to reduce a little bit. So the impact on the average residential property, we're looking at an overall increase of $236 on the tax bill, or roughly just under $20 per month. So the municipal taxes, even at the 2026 figure, equate to less than $200 a month. I know there's a big increase, but I'm looking at my own situation. I pay $500 a month in strata fees, and I think, what do I get for that? A little bit of elevator maintenance, maybe a little bit of landscaping. It'll pay for my utilities, some insurance, and then I compare that to what a taxpayer gets for $186 a month in municipal taxes, and it's not even in the same ballpark. I think that's something I always keep in mind. I am a big believer in the value of municipal services, and so are all these people in the room behind me. So the 5-year projection, yes, we're looking at another double-digit increase this year, our second in 2 years. Our 2 largest increases in the last 26 years, and certainly longer than I've been here. And the reasons for this have been well covered, and I'll give you the highlights yet again because it's an important message. We're looking to taper off a little bit next year, although it's still higher than we're used to, and then it tapers off a bit more, but as we all know, the latter years tend to be somewhat understated because there could be factors beyond our control that'll hit us once again, as has been the case the last couple of years with things like RCMP dispatch. So why are we here? It's a decision, I mean, it's a situation 6 years in the making. It started with the pandemic in 2020. We all know we went back and reduced our very modest tax increase that we had previously proved to 0, and we cut business taxes by 10%. We knew at the time that was an emergency measure, and we'd eventually have to phase back to full taxation. Well, then we got a little help from the senior government in the form of the Safe Restart Grant, which really made our job of phasing back, in one sense, much easier, but in another sense, much more difficult because we relied on that as a cushion, and we avoided making the tough choices. So property tax revenues were reduced by nearly $600,000 in 2020 alone, but the expenditure levels stayed the same, and In that year and in all the intervening years between then and now, we have added new services largely in the area of public safety. Just this year, police and fire represent 5.4% of that 12.4% increase. So looking back at what we did over the last 6 years, we used not just the Safe Restart grant, but extra allocations of our accumulated surplus to keep tax increases to a bare minimum. In hindsight, I'm here to tell you that was a mistake on my part in not recommending higher gradual tax increases. The cumulative tax mitigation, which is what I call those other revenues, amounts to a tax impact of about 15.08% that we have to make up in a very short time frame. So this shows what we've done over the last 6 years. So the blue area on the graph is mitigation. The green is the actual tax increases that were applied. What we really should have been doing all these years is no blue, all green. That's the only way we could have paid for our services in a sustainable way, and our tax increases would have been much more level than they have been the last 2 years. So this is a hypothetical that we've seen a few times now. What if, starting in 2021, we had added 3% to our modest tax increase just to gradually phase back as opposed to leaving it to the latter 2 years? Well, we would have seen much higher increases, but we wouldn't have had these 2 double digits, or perhaps only just 1. And, you know, we're getting a lot of attention because of double-digit tax increases. Would we have received the same attention if we had done it more gradually? It's hard to say. The reason taxes are such a big deal is they're roughly 69.3% of our overall revenues. This is how we fund our operations. So we talk about a balanced budget that we have to maintain every year. So we have a certain level of general operating expenditures which are funded by operating revenues. So the first part of that is, other revenues, fees and charges, government grants, that kind of thing. So that covers roughly a quarter of our overall operations. And then property taxes cover roughly 69% of it. That still leaves a little gap, which we typically fund with an allocation of surplus. And we all know why we do that. The past few years, we've been using a higher amount than I'm comfortable with, just to keep the tax increases lower than they perhaps could be. But we're running out of surplus, we're below policy levels, and we can't keep doing that. This is what's been happening to our surplus in relation to our policy. So we have a long-standing policy for how much we should have or should target to have. And as of the last 5 years since COVID, we have fallen way below that line, and we have to think about replenishment. I like to update you each and every year on the costs of our RCMP contract, which have more than doubled in the 17 years since 2009. So we are now paying nearly $2.6 million just for our 16 RCMP officers. Community support funding for things like the Mary Winspear Center, the museum, Shaw Center for the Salish Sea, economic development, grants, and a few other community contributions have also increased a great deal over the last 12 years. These also have more than doubled to the tune of now $1.35 million, which is 7.3% of our operating budget for these important community partners. We undertook a citizen satisfaction survey last year, the first one in about 10 years, and the results were overwhelming in terms of 86% of respondents said they received fairly good or very good value for taxes. On top of that, when asked whether they'd rather see service cuts or tax increases, 62% say they'd rather see increased taxes to enhance or expand services or to maintain services at the current level. So that's a strong indication that people were satisfied with value for money, and that they value the services and are willing to pay for them. Now, the question I want to ask you is, do we really think $20 a month or $36 over the course of 2 years is going to impact those results? That's a question I can't answer, but I have my own feelings about that, considering how strong the survey results were. Quick reminder, it takes $163,582 in reductions to reduce property taxes by 1%. So to take it to 11.4. And that 1% savings equals $20 per year, or $1.66 a month for the average residence. So we balance these minor savings against the items that we're cutting. Are the proposed services worth more than $1.66 a month? That's another question that's important to consider. Municipal services have tremendous value to the community, and we believe strongly in them. If we are looking for reductions, the most likely sources are capital projects that are funded from taxation, and there's not that many of those, to be honest, roughly 1% in total. Also, tax-funded supplemental items, which we will go through in detail. We can reduce a couple of our reserves to our transfers to reserve, but that will impact the amount of funding we have for capital, and we might be, robbing Peter to pay Paul in that respect. Normally, I would say use more surplus, but that is no longer on the table, as we've used as much as, well, more than enough that we're comfortable with. So in terms of items requiring review, I propose we cover the supplemental request first. A couple more slides as we get into it, and then we'll move on to capital, and again, a couple of more slides, and then back to council, and then on to non-tax funded capital, perhaps general operations, and finish off with utilities. So if there are any proposed changes tonight, perhaps council could do those by resolution. And I'm wondering if there are any general questions before we dive into our first area.
Thank you, Mr. Hissick. I see two colleagues, so I'll first turn to Councillor Duck, then Councillor O'Keefe.
Just for clarification, if you can, Mr. Hissick, the survey that showed the sort of the inclination of the community, was that pre or post the last tax increase?
As we discussed at the last meeting, that survey was done before the 2025 taxes came out. So that's why I say cumulatively there are $36 additional per month over the 2 years.
And just following up on public participation, have we looked at increasing our shared services with our colleagues in North Saanich or Central Saanich or others?
Well, as you know, we have a joint RCMP detachment. For many years, we've had mutual or automatic aid agreements with our fire department partners. We have looked at enhancing the amount of shared services between our departments, but that's a long-term process that will take a little while to work through, and it's been really hampered by changes in leadership in our neighboring departments. That has a huge impact on our ability to work with these jurisdictions and move initiatives like that forward.
So similarly, that's in primarily in operations, but if we looked also in capital, so an example I think of is, we need a dump truck. Do we need that dump truck 7 days a week, or is there a way which we can share that dump truck with North Saanich, for example?
I will defer to the Director of Engineering or the Manager of Operations, if you don't mind.
I'll just wait for the sirens to pass from one of the 18 fire departments in the
Good
region.
evening, Mr. Murphy.
Through the chair, through the mayor to Councillor Duck. So I'm not aware if we've looked specifically. We're very cautious with adding new equipment and continually looking to make sure that we're utilizing the equipment we have as efficiently as possible. And the the amount of additional administration and coordination to coordinate between two different municipalities, the value is unlikely to be there, but it's not something we have the capacity to study or have studied to this point.
Councillor Duck, just before I continue, I'll turn to Mr. Edwards if I may.
Thank you, Mayor. Through you to Councillor Duck, I just wanted to add on, there are several other services that we do already share, including library as a regional service, and it's a shared facility for North Saanich and ourselves. And the recreation is also a regional service that's run by the CRD, and we greatly benefit from that. Other municipalities within the CRD, including Saanich, Oak Bay, and Esquimalt, all have their own recreation departments, which consume a huge portion of their operating and capital. And so we're fortunate to, in some regards, to be able to rely on the CRD to provide those services for us. We definitely pay for them, but we benefit from it being a sub-regional service. And then we also collaborate with our neighbors in North Saanich on some parks maintenance and operations. And so Rotary Park is a great example of shared service there, where it's owned by, or it's in North Saanich, but we do the maintenance, and we have a cost sharing arrangement there. And so North Saanich doesn't have the same level of lawn cutting equipment that we have, and so we provide that service on their behalf. And so we definitely look for these types of opportunities and work collaboratively towards that end. And certainly there's more options and opportunities available, but sometimes they don't present themselves in the way that we'd like them to, or when we would like them to. But we're always looking for that.
Thank you. Yes, I'm aware of all those services, and my suggestion is that at some point we looked at those and decided that we could share those with other municipalities, and I think we need to look deeper into other areas and start to evaluate that, because that shared service has, as you indicated, saved us money over other municipalities like Oak Bay and Esquimalt. So I think it's in our best interest to find ways in which we can share services, whether it's a dump truck or gardening services or whatever, and just that we need to start looking at that versus increasing the taxes just because we need to provide that service in our municipality and not share it with others. Thank you. As was suggested in public participation, are we starting to look at service review? So I'm asking the question of evaluating what we must provide versus what we like to provide or wish to provide.
Through the mayor to councillor, effectively every year, especially around budget time, there's an opportunity for council to direct staff to do such a review. And we are constantly looking for efficiencies internally, and so whether that's looking at workflows and efficiencies through just day-to-day operations. But the bigger and broader service reviews are quite involved in complex exercises that it's not that we wouldn't endeavor to take that on if that was council's wish, but it needs to be stated that those are actually fairly expensive and costly endeavors in and of themselves. They often do yield benefit, and so it's not that we would shy away from that, but it's not something that I believe that we see that there's a pressing need for that, and so it's not something that staff would be bringing forward recommending to council, but it's always council's opportunity and prerogative if they wish to undertake such a type of review.
Thank you, and if I may, Mayor, one more question. Mr. Hissack, you've indicated that the increase right now stands around 12.4%. Is that just the municipal portion? That's the only one we control, so I'm assuming that's the only one it is.
That's correct. It's
Right. So on top of that, the average property taxpayer is going to face utilities and sewer and water increases. They're going to see increases in their school taxes, and they're gonna see increases in their CRD taxes, is that correct?
It's almost certain that the total dollar amount will be greater than our 246 with utilities, but the percentage will be lower.
Okay, so,
The overall percentage increase will be lower.
but the bottom line is the average taxpayer is going to face in excess of $250 because of the cumulative tax increases from across the board. Not to mention federal and provincial, but that's even beyond the spectrum of that.
Very much beyond. Yes, that typically does happen.
Okay.
Other jurisdictions have their needs too, just like we do. We're all trying to become sustainable.
So the reason I'm bringing this up is I really want to encourage us as a council and staff that if this happens in a household, you tighten your belt. And so we've got to find ways to tighten our belt, whether that's shared services or reviews or doing things we only must do and take away the things we not. So we don't go on vacation this year or whatever it is. But I don't think the survey represents what people saw in the 2 years, because they didn't see double-digit increases until this 2 years after the survey. So I'm really concerned that that's the impact on the people, is that they would like to see those services continued, but the reality is that they're willing to say, hey, you know what, I can't afford that. And I don't think the average family can find more money for groceries, for gas, as we see those escalate as well. So I just want us to be conscious of that as we move forward, to find ways in which we can look at the must-have services versus the wish list. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Duck. Councillor O'Keefe, please.
Thank you. Thank you for the recap and additional information. Just tagging on to Councillor Duck's comment about the increase, I just want to clarify that. So the tax increase of $234, that's just our portion for municipal taxes. So there will be additional increases on top of that, perhaps in the, I don't know, $100 or more from hospital, CRD, those other sorts of organizations. Just wanting to check my understanding of that.
Absolutely,
Yeah,
that happens
okay.
every year. I just
Okay, so it's
CR
not,
yeah, CRD hospital is flat, if not a tiny reduction. CRD is modest. The big ones the last couple of years have been provincial school taxes and transit. We don't know at this point what those will be.
okay.
School
yeah.
is always the last one we hear about, and that's usually in April.
Okay, yeah, thanks for that clarification. Keeping on the topic of review of services and that sort of things, and it was mentioned in public participation that the letter in terms of looking for efficiencies, and I know staff say every year that we always look for efficiencies. Are there any things that you can kind of point to the public to say, here's something that we did, we got a new computer system and we reduced our, I don't know, something by a certain percentage, or we were able to reduce man hours or something due to certain efficiencies? Anything like that we can throw out to them.
Well, there's probably dozens of examples, but I can't talk to too many of them on the fly. Perhaps
Okay.
for the next meeting, we can give you a few examples.
Okay.
One that I did touch on last time was in our annual software licensing, we enhanced that, which allows us to use our computers essentially for our VoIP telephone system, and instead of having dedicated equipment that we have to replace periodically. That's one thing within my own department.
Okay. And then just a question about the slide that showed tax increases in the coming year. When we're calculating the future increases, are we factoring in what we are predicting for additional tax revenues from increase in our tax base? Is that kind of factored in, or?
It's always the first line of defense,
Okay,
always.
so
It
there
was
was-
on the slide.
okay. And I'm just wondering, and I probably should have asked this sooner, so you might not have it, but do we have any just rough idea of how our population has increased, say in the last 3 years, or the number of dwelling units that we've had in the last few years? I know there's a census, but do we have any other information that we have that's a little bit more finely tuned?
I believe BC Stats provides an annual update, estimate that, and many jurisdictions rely on that in between the censuses.
Okay,
Number of households, easy. We get those stats annually through our assessment system.
yeah, okay.
And if I may just add too, and through our housing targets annual reporting, we report out on the net new units, and we met our first year's target of 90 new units, so that gets reported to council annually, as well as our monthly building permit and development permit stats are all there too. So that data is readily available.
Okay, great. That's it for me for now, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor O'Keefe. Not seeing other speakers, I have just one question. Could we go back to the slide, Mr. Hisik, on the tax increases to residential property owners, please? Think it was the one.
There's the tax base growth in the second line.
Yes, thank you. So this is part of our budget package. If you go to our budget package online, it is there. We did have a speaker this evening request that the same information be provided for commercial industrial taxpayers. Council, you're aware that I did forward a question along these lines to Mr. Hisik, and we were provided with that information in chart form for tonight's meeting. But, and I may make some reference to it later, but my question, Mr. Hisik, is could a comparable chart for commercial industrial taxpayers be created and added to our budget package and therefore show as part of the online budget as well?
Absolutely, Mr. Mayor. I actually have that slide if I can sign back into Zoom and show you, but it'll definitely be part of the next presentation so that it's part of the record.
Thank you. I'll turn it back to you, Mr. Hisik, to take us through the next portion. Or you were going to try and bring that up, or?
Yeah. Please bear with me.
Yep, no, certainly.
So this is it. I did it in two different ways. One is looking at the so-called average commercial property, which is assessed at a much higher value than the average residential. So the first line shows that the average commercial property would pay an extra $967 this year, or $81 a month. If you take the value of the average residence and apply the commercial rates to it, then it would be a little bit lower. More of a fair comparison with the residential, then they'd be paying an additional $568 for this year.
Thank you. And just, sorry, Councillor Gannett, please.
Thank you, Mayor. Just have one question. So would it be fair to say, we're looking at a 12.4% increase starting point, that the three main drivers of this increase would be, as you've already shown in slides, protective services, the increase to WorkSafe rates that we have to pay, and the decision or the ramification coming from 2020 deciding not to charge taxes to the residents and decreasing the business tax or commercial tax? Would that be a fair statement?
Two of those three, yes. I think the WorkSafe rate is, it's definitely an impact, but it's less than 1% over. It's about 1% overall. It's really about protective services and about the fact that we are still phasing back to the levels that we should have been at over the last 6 years. That is by far the biggest single factor.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. So while this chart is up, Mr. Hisik, you did include it in your email, but could you just speak to the target ratio of commercial to residential? And you noted our policy change recently, and and what it is this year, last year and this year,
Yeah,
relative to that.
absolutely. So a number of years ago, this council made a policy decision to gradually reduce the discrepancy between residential and non-residential taxes, and we had a goal of getting to a ratio of 2 to 1 in terms of percentage of assessment made up by commercial and percentage of taxes paid by commercial, being no more than 2 to 1. And last year we organically went below that target just because of shifts in assessment, and this year we stayed below the target. So even though when we started on this policy exercise we were among the 3 lowest in the region in terms of that business differential, we are now even lower. So no, it's never going to be 1 to 1, and there's good reasons for that. Nobody in BC is or will be, but we're doing relatively well compared to the average.
Thank you. And for the record, in 2025 it was 1.94, and this year it's 1.96. So thank you for that. Councillor Rintoul, please.
Thank you, Mayor. Just following up on Councillor Garnett's question, if I may, through the Mayor to Mr. Hisik. Councillor Garnett made reference to the increase to protective services being significant, and just to clarify that a little further and drill down into it, really the most significant touch to that in 2026 is the RCMP dispatch being downloaded, correct? At some 3.5% of our overall tax increase.
It is absolutely the largest factor in our operating budget, just shy of 3%.
So we have zero latitude to address that at this time, but we've heard previously, and I'm only drawing attention to this because there were some good suggestions during public participation around synergies in communities, and there are communities in addition to Sydney that have been affected by this very recent download from the province to several communities. Staff had noted the prospect of a dispatch service perhaps being explored that may be an alternative to the current model through e-com dispatching RCMP services. Is that accurate?
Yes, the 10 affected South Island municipalities have been looking for alternatives, and I believe the first one didn't pan out, but the investigation continues, and given time, there's a chance we'll be able to find an efficiency there like we did on the fire dispatch side.
Sure. And I don't think it's lost on on the public, this piece of, downloading and cost moving to municipalities, but we're certainly seeing that with the fire service, responding to a greater volume of provincial ambulance calls. We're seeing that with dispatch being downloaded to these smaller communities. And so I guess I just want that on the record for some context with respect to, a segment of these increases, at least, and a very significant one, having been forced on municipalities. So I'll leave it there. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you.
Okay. Supplemental requests are one-time or ongoing additions to our operating budget or our service levels in some cases. They can be one-time studies, new staffing, new programs or services. Occasionally there are increases in our community contributions. And all these supplementals that we're going to be looking at today are included in that 12.4%. So if approved, then they won't add to the burden, but if they're not approved, then they will reduce the burden. So any rejections or deferrals will reduce the tax impact. So I'd like to propose we consider it in this manner. We start with the 2026 one-time requests, then go on to the 2026 ongoing items, and then look at future year impacts. And perhaps, as mentioned earlier, any preliminary changes should be made in the form of a resolution. And these are for your reference in your budget binder, pages 13 to 24. So we have a number of one-time requests, and this is the entire list. Most of them are just for 1 year. A couple of them might extend beyond 1 year, but they're not meant to be permanent, ongoing. These are listed by functional area, starting with administration. We're looking for 50,000 more to continue the civic sites analysis. Another larger one is the Beacon Wharf inspection, which is done every 3 years. Beacon Avenue traffic study, that was subject to a question earlier this week, and that's one area. If council is comfortable making the decision to make the traffic pattern changes without a study, perhaps that doesn't need to proceed. But that's really at the comfort and discretion of council. A lot of these are fairly small ticket items. Just focus on the bottom line there is the debt payments related to the Public Works Admin building. This is related to a capital item that I briefly outlined last time, and it's also covered in your staff report, where we're looking to purchase a prefabricated structure to replace the long past its best before date administration trailer at the works yard. If we do this, we would finance it through short-term borrowing, so repay it within 5 years. There's a potential for some recovery at the end of its life, should it be replaced by a larger redevelopment. And having this building in place will potentially buy us a few years in having to really think about our public works yard and replacing that in a greater capacity. Perhaps we could field some questions or discussion about these before moving on to the next section.
Thank you, Mr. Hisik. So we do have 14 items here, colleagues, and I would turn to any member of council who would like to ask a question on any of them or propose a motion on any of them. Councillor Keefe, please.
Thank you. Turning my attention to the Bevan Avenue traffic study. And so we did, as you mentioned, had some email traffic in regards to that. My questions were, comments were, it seems like staff had a pretty good idea that there was an issue there. Some statistics were provided by email about the number of accidents that have taken place along there. And that maybe a four-way stop or something might be appropriate at one of those intersections. So I guess my question to staff was, and I think you gave us the answers, that if council wanted to forego that study, that we could provide staff with direction to move forward with a solution that they think would be appropriate to address that issue rather than spending the $35,000 on the consultant.
Through the mayor to Councillor O'Keefe. So yes, we anticipate that the result of a study would be to recommend four-way stops from second to fourth. And at the same time, a study might say you're okay for a while, you can wait a few years, or it might recommend them right now. That's dependent on traffic volumes. From a safety perspective, I think everyone would agree that four-way stops would likely be a good idea on Bevan. Myself, the first time I drove through Sydney, the only thing that saved me there from assuming that was a four-way stop was the little yellow through traffic does not stop sign. So it's essentially calling for four-way stops there. So if we were to remove this item, staff would be happy to bring forward a report, a recommendation saying we'd like to go ahead with four-way stops on Bevan and those intersections for council approval. And then we'd go ahead. Just to note, though, that the $35,000, our allocation is for $25,000 for a study and $10,000 for implementation. So we would ask to keep some money for implementation, but certainly are open to not doing the study if that's council's wish.
Okay, thank you. So based on that, I'll move that we remove from the budget the $35,000 for the Beacon Avenue traffic study.
Just to clarify, Councillor O'Keefe, Mr. Murphy mentioned that 10,000 was for implementation, so,
Yeah, I'm getting to that.
okay.
I guess I could have done it at all one fell swoop, but I was gonna say, remove it, but add in $10,000 for implementation. So if you just wanna say reduce, because I wanted to take out, mention that we're not gonna do a study, but that's why I said to take out the $35,000 for the study.
I'm gonna second on the understanding that we're removing $25,000 from the budget.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. We have it moved and seconded for the motivation.
I think it's kind of covered previously. Basically, my understanding is staff know what the issue is. They've got an idea for a solution. So I don't see the value of spending $35,000 for somebody else to come and tell us what staff already seem to know. Yeah, so.
Councillor Rintoul.
Nothing further.
I just have two questions. One is, if it was studied, could any other recommendations besides four-way stops come forward? Are there other safety measures besides four-way stops to be considered?
To the chair, so we can't think of any other solutions that might be proposed. As I mentioned earlier, a study might say you're okay waiting for a few years before implementing, but that would be based on traffic volumes and less on the safety perceptions, if not realities.
Thank you. Second question is, this study would not include the Bevan and Fifth four-way stop intersection.
To the mayor, so with the four-way stop already there, that would not be included, and, right.
So just staying on this topic, through previous traffic studies and hearing from the public, there have been safety concerns at that four-way stop, given the gradually increasing volume of traffic over time. The last time it was studied, I can't remember when that was, there was not a recommendation to implement traffic lights there. Do staff have an idea when a study to determine whether that is a reasonable step forward might occur?
To the mayor, so I'll adjust the previous answer to say that when we would have been scoping out the study, we probably would have included, should there be traffic lights at that intersection instead of a four-way stop. Traffic lights are incredibly expensive, so it's not likely to be something we could implement even if it was starting to be called for by traffic volumes. But we could, so a specific look at traffic lights at that intersection could be added on at any point in time. Would need funding to do a study, but could come at any point in the future.
Thank you. So I'm supportive of the motion for a couple of reasons. One is we've heard well, I guess we first heard the issue larger, a greater concern on Sydney Avenue, and we did study and act, and I think it's been very positively received in the community. Certainly for me personally, who crosses it at least once a day, and I can see it being positively received on Bevan at those three intersections as well. And while it might be nice to do a study of the four-way stop intersection at this point, I think making an improvement at the other three intersections is a good step at this stage, and would welcome staff to bring back a study of just that intersection in a future year as they feel appropriate. Councillor Duck.
Thank you, Mayor. I just was going to say the same statement relative to our experience on Sydney, so I think we can reflect on that relative to Bevan. Thank you.
Thank you. Seeing no further discussion, I'll call the question. Those in favor? That carries unanimous. Thank you. Councillor Keefe, you had the floor.
Just following up on that last one. So do staff require an additional follow-up motion from us directing staff to come forward with a report on improvements to traffic safety on Bevan?
Through the mayor to Councillor O'Keefe, so I'm not clear on whether we took out the full 35,000 or the 25,000.
We've taken out 25,000.
Okay.
So we left
Excellent.
10,000.
Excellent.
And so what I'm,
So that, yeah.
yeah.
So that leaves a capital budget item, which will remind us to do the project. So that will drive bringing a report for approval for council, but you're certainly welcome to add in a resolution to make it
I'll
clear.
make the resolution just so it's on the books as an action item, that staff bring back to council a report on potential safety measures to implement on Bevan Avenue.
Do we have a seconder? I'll call for a seconder a second time. Not seeing any. Councillor Keefe, the motion does not make it to the floor. Okay. Thank you. Oh, you'll do it anyways. Thank you. Councillor, you had the floor. Any other items?
I just had a question about the Veterans Crosswalk repainting. Oh, sorry. Just a question on the Veterans Crosswalk repainting of $10,000. So is that, my recollection is didn't we just do that? And so does it already need repair? And if so, is that something that we're gonna have to do every year then?
I believe Mr. Robinson's on the
I can
on the
answer.
Zoom call.
Mr. Murphy?
Through the mayor to Councillor O'Keefe. So yes, the Veterans Memorial Crosswalk was installed last fall, leading up to Remembrance Day. It was intentionally done with paint, which is the least longest lasting treatment. And the reason for that was because the asphalt underneath is aging and crumbling, not crumbling, but we call it alligatoring. It needs repair. And so it was a decision at the time to provide the memorial, but spend as little money as possible, recognizing that to make it more permanent, we would go back, hopefully this year, redo the asphalt under the crosswalk in that area, and then apply a more permanent treatment. A treatment that should last for years. So there would be no intention
Okay.
of going back each year.
Okay, good.
This essentially is a request for funds to do the project right with
Yeah.
the time available for the longer term.
Okay, great.
Councillor Keefe, I'll just note that that is a capital budget item that we would have been coming to. So do you have any others on these 14 items?
Not for now, there's things I'm contemplating, but I'll look forward to what other colleagues have to say.
Thank you. I'll turn to Councillor Rintoul and Councillor Gannett.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll move that the $10,000 for the heritage options analysis be removed from the budget.
Do we have a seconder?
Second for discussion.
Thank you. Councillor?
Yeah, thank you. Well, I know there was some community interest. I think it dates back probably to last year on seeing this initiated. You know, I feel like it's the beginning of a process that's likely going to continue to be, you know, not overly expensive to pursue, but a further demand on staff time, further resources, and further dollars as it advances. And so I'm not suggesting that it's not worthy of attention at some point in a future budget cycle. I'm not suggesting to move it out in the 5-year plan, but I think I'm looking to see if, you know, what the static interest in the community may be like in this to be readdressed by future council. Thank you.
Thank you. Seconder?
Yeah, just, this is one of those items where I think is on our wish list, and it's not on our need list right now. I understand that the future thought of it, but right now, just a wish item, not a need item. Thank you.
Thank you. I just have one question through to staff, and that is, with the provincial government looking at the Heritage Act and pulling back, if you will, after a lot of concern expressed by municipalities, do we see any potential changes the provincial government may or may make to that act impacting how we would conduct this item? Not this project, no. Okay, thank you. Seeing no further discussion, I'll call the question. Those in favor? Oh, sorry, Councillor Gannett. I'm sorry.
Thank you, Mayor. Question. Is this an opportunity to redirect reserve funds for items on this page? Like, I'm not sure how to factor that into. I had the mind to pull something from that's not on this page, but is a one-time request that's currently reserve funded, but those funds could be redirected to do tax-funded items on this page. Is that a complicated way of saying? I've been looking at this a long time,
Well,
so.
Through the chair to Councillor Garnett, it is possible, but it depends on which reserve you have in mind, because they do have limitations on how they may be used.
Yeah, no, I'm looking at the land sale reserve, which I think we have a lot more optionality on what we can do with that. And in terms of the fenced dog area, if we were not to proceed with that.
Sorry,
and
Councillor, just to interrupt, we do have a motion live on the floor to call a question.
Sorry, yeah.
Does your question pertain to? Okay, I will certainly turn back to you. So I'll look to call the question. Those in favor? Sorry, Councillor O'Keefe?
Yeah, yeah, on the heritage stuff, I agree that I think it's still an important thing, and I would be more inclined to support it now if there had been some community group that had done significant work and was bringing forward proposals. And I know there was a little bit of interest in the past, but haven't seen anything lately on that. So I agree with colleagues that I think this is something we can remove for now. And if there's interest in the future and citizens kind of bringing forward concrete proposals on things we might do, then we could revisit it at that time.
Thank you, Councillor Keith. Any further discussion on this item? Seeing none, those in favor? That carries unanimous. Thank you. Councillor Gurnett, did you wish to continue with your question?
Sorry, thank you, Mayor. Yeah, no,
Sorry, but I do have one
jumped the gun.
qualifier,
Yep.
small qualifier perhaps. Does your question pertain to use of reserve funds on one of these 14 projects on the screen?
the redirecting, yes.
Yes. Okay,
Yeah.
please continue.
Yeah, so if we were to sorry now, the fenced dog area at Iroquois Park, $40,000 from land sale reserve. So if we were to not go forward with that plan for this year,
Sorry, that is a capital project in another section of the budget. These 14 items we have here are supplemental requests. And we were wanting to address, if we could, any of these 14
yeah,
items.
I'm just trying to find I'm sorry, it's a sort of a roundabout way of finding ways to promote these being still in the budget, but finding another way to pay for them. So I just don't, so that's why I asked the question, is it pertinent to ask it at this point or wait until further on to when we get to that?
If it's for capital budget items, yes. If it's for these items, it would be appropriate now. If it's for capital budget items, it'll be when we
Sorry.
come to capital budget items. Mr. Hissick.
Just to clarify, Mr. Chair, there are certain reserves that are allocated to a capital project, and there is a limitation on using them for capital only. And if the item that you're looking to redirect it to is not really capital in nature, I would say it's not eligible. But generally, if it's reserve funding that may be used for an operating purpose, then yes, that can be redirected, in speaking generally.
And where does the land sale reserve fund land in that equation?
That is meant for capital projects.
It's specified for capital, okay,
That's under one of our own reserve establishment bylaws.
great, thank you, that's all I need to know, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Are there any other items on this list? Councillor Rintoul, please.
Thank you, Mayor. And I know there was a question submitted online about this, but perhaps if it could be elaborated in this forum for further consideration, the courthouse accessibility improvements, not really through the lens of the accessibility improvements themselves, but around utilization. So if you could speak to how much of this relates to access to driver services, versus the courthouse and utilization, to help us assess the priority of those works. Thank you.
I'm sorry, Councillor, can you repeat the beginning of your question? I was deep in thought on something and I missed it.
Courthouse accessibility improvements. Oh, thank you. Courthouse accessibility improvements. Elaborate on, and I know it came out in email, but in the context of this discussion this evening, elaborate on that work and utilization levels of the courthouse building and how much of this is actually geared more towards driver services.
I would say it's 95% driver services, because that is a building that's heavily used every day, whereby court services are in the neighborhood of 1 day per month. So we call it the courthouse, but it houses the driver services function. The RCMP portion of the building is not really served by this entrance. So I would say virtually entirely for driver services.
Thank you. Nothing further.
Thank you. Are there any other items for discussion? Not seeing any. If you could continue on to tax-funded capital, please, Mr. Hissick. Sorry, would we require a motion at this time to approve these supplemental requests, the remaining supplemental requests?
If that is council's wish to approve it at this time, then that would be in order. If you'd rather wait until the final meeting, that's your prerogative as well. But if there is no appetite for further changes, then it certainly could be approved by resolution.
Councillor Keefe?
I prefer that we wait to approve these till next time. The public has still got the opportunity to comment on things until next week, so I'm a little bit reluctant to give final approval to things until we've had opportunity to, sort of go through the rest of things. So that's my thoughts.
Thank you, and we will have the seventh member of council in attendance at our next budget meeting. So, Mr. Hisik, we will pause on that approval, and if you could continue, please.
Moving on to ongoing supplemental requests for 2026. You have a fairly lengthy list headed by the RCMP dispatch, which is a mandated downloading of costs. Last year we funded it from a surplus, so it would reduce the tax impact, but now that it's definitely going to be an ongoing portion of our operating budget, it should be tax funded, and the impact of that alone is nearly 3%. The next largest item is also emergency services related. It's anticipated fire personnel increases. We are in the midst of of negotiating our second contract with the firefighters union, and it's virtually certain that there will be some impacts this year. Exactly what those are not yet known, but this is our best estimate for what the 2026 impacts will be, as well as you'll see that there are ongoing impacts in future years as well. By this time next year, we should have a firm number for you, and we'll certainly clarify at the earliest opportunity. The major case disclosure clerk for the RCMP was pre-approved back in December, so this important position could be put in place as soon as possible. And there are a number of other requests that have ongoing impacts.
Thank you, Mr. Hisik, and my apologies in making reference to going to capital. This is still within the operating budget, and it is ongoing requests. That is impacts in 2026, but continuing into latter years. Are there any questions from colleagues on any of these items? I'm not seeing any. I'll raise one, and that is, sorry, I just need to. Is the Sydney Sparkles Parade after party of $5,000. We certainly appreciate what Peninsula Celebration Society does for all the events, but the largest event is certainly the Canada Day events. But this is after the Sydney Sparkles Parade in the winter time. And while I think it's a nice to have at this point in time, I think the organization has been successful in gaining support from the community at large, and I would make a motion to remove this.
Second.
Turn to Mr. Hisik for a comment.
Just want to indicate that the annual application for Peninsula Celebrations events is coming forward next Monday, and there will be additional information that might support this. So my suggestion might be maybe put off this decision until after that information is available.
So Peninsula Celebrations will be presenting at our next budget meeting?
I'm not sure if they're presenting, but there's a staff report coming on their annual events, which might provide a bit more detail about this particular edition.
Okay, with the acceptance of the seconder, I'll withdraw the motion.
Okay.
Thank you. Councillor Rintoul?
Yeah, thank you. Apologies, I would have spoken up earlier. I thought we were just at questions, but I'd like to move removal from the 2026 budget of the part-time bylaw enforcement officer.
Do we have a seconder? Second for discussion, go ahead.
Thank you. Yes, I think, I do believe staff have articulated, a need for this, position based on, volume. And, what I'm really suggesting here by removing it from 2026 is that, see it implemented potentially in 2027. There have been certainly a number of discussions, either from the public brought forward in this forum, or elsewhere around, future efficiencies and what we may see around technological, opportunities that may well help streamline services, of this nature. I do realize this is very much, get out there and be, in front of the public and investigative in that sense. And I think, we're being tasked with some challenging decisions, to be made. This is one, that staff are recommending, based on where they see a public need to, improve the service. And, what I'm saying is there's a cost to that, and that maybe looking to implement it in a future budget cycle would be prudent. I'll leave my comments, sir.
Thank you. As a seconder for discussion, I just have a question through to staff, and that was it the case, I think it was sometime during last term, where a building official, one of our building officials was tasked, was qualified to assist with bylaw enforcement? Mr. Edwards?
Because of the nature of the work that our bylaw officer finds themselves in, they're often requiring an additional staff member to be present for some of the work. And so at times it might have been our building official. More recently, our safety officer has been accompanying our bylaw officer on many occasions. And so realistically, we're borrowing staff from other departments to assist our bylaw services. And where we're finding the real pinch is in just the significant increased volume of calls for service. And so in 2023, we saw approximately 300 calls for service. 2024 it was approximately 300 calls for service. In 2025, it was increased by 100 calls. And so, we're at the place, the size of the community, whereby we really do need that additional support. I could go on further, but I feel like I'm going beyond the question here, so I'll pause there.
Thank you for taking the question. And my second question is, in terms of the $30,000 allocation, how many months of this year this person would have to be recruited at this point? How many months of the year would that amount cover? And do we anticipate a larger amount next year for full year?
The 30,000 is
Oh, sorry,
estimated
do-
for half a year, and we're looking at a full year cost beginning next year of about 55, and then escalating from there based on salary increases.
Sorry, I did see that, and my question was, do we anticipate that the position being in place for 6 months this year? And the answer is essentially yes. Thank you. Councillor Gurnett, please.
Thank you, Mayor. I won't support the motion. I actually, before the budget came out, long before the budget came out, I actually thought this was something we needed. And that's based on my experience walking through the community and actually speaking with our bylaw officer on a regular basis, and our safety officer, and the RCMP officer who also attends with them on their wellness checks. And just the conversations, I invite everyone on council to do it, to find out what this particular individual is dealing with on a daily basis, and how much the job has changed and how much demand there is. And quite a lot of negative public reaction, I'll put it that way to put it nicely, and how level-headed this person is and how great they do at their job. And actually the safety officer as well, I have to compliment them. They have done an amazing job on what they're doing. But as staff indicates, and if you look at the numbers, what we've been provided, 51 calls for service last year. In the first 2 months, we're already at 75. So the numbers are actually going up. And as the town grows, it's going to become something more. And, we should just be things like parking and neighbors. But now I mean, he showed me a screen and he has hundreds of emails a day to answer, and that's just from after a weekend. And like the workload has just gotten crazy. So I don't know how he actually keeps up with everything he's required to do. So, you know, I think this is badly needed now. It's we live in a different world. We don't live in the bylaw officer of 10 years ago. We live in a world where it's just so complex and there's so many issues they have to deal with. I think it's important that there's another person there to help with the workload, just because of the many different things they have to deal with on a daily basis. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Duck, please.
Just to be clear, what's been recommended is this year, not continuing years. So we're just looking at 1 year, or half a year, based on the information. So I just want to make sure that we're understanding that's 1/2 year, not continuing years. But I appreciate the comments. Thank you.
So to clarify, the question as I understand it is that if this motion were to pass, there would not be a hiring of the position in 2026, but we would leave the remaining budget in place, and therefore staff could recruit later this year for a position to start in January of 2027. Is that your understanding, or is that your intention, Councillor O'Toole?
Correct.
Thank you. Councillor Duck? Thank you. Councillor O'Keefe, please.
Thank you. I'll support, I'll support the motion. I don't disagree that bylaw officers do tough work. And just anecdotally, and with conversations and emails prior to the meeting, a little bit more information on what they're dealing with. However, I guess when we're looking at increasing our staffing levels, and has been mentioned in public participation in letters, our staffing is kind of the thing that absorbs a lot of our budget. And so for me, I think that there should be a degree of rigor involved in terms of how we add extra staff. And so what I'm accustomed to in my life in federal public service, if I had a need for extra staff, I had to put a business case together to support that. And so that would include statistics, where the bulk of the work is coming from, whether there was technology that could be used, whether policy or other interventions could be used. So that's kind of the thing that I would prefer to see. And it sort of demonstrates, I think, to the public who is paying for this, that we have put some rigor and we've looked at this rather than just using anecdotal. So I'll support this. I was actually not going to support it going into to allow staffing in this year, because I would still like to see a report come forward to justify the position, but
We'll stay with the motion, for now.
yeah.
Okay, thank you. I'll turn to Mr. Edwards, please.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to make a couple of remarks reflecting on the comments made by Councillor O'Keefe. And so it's not all anecdotal commentary to support this. We did provide council with clarity of the actual calls for service increasing. It's not one-off events. It's month over month. The rate of calls for service is increasing significantly, and and additionally in the
I'm not sure who's popular, but
in addition, the Citizen Satisfactory Survey did identify this as an area in need of improvement relative to the majority or all of the services that were surveyed. This was an area that was identified as one needing improvement, and it was identified as one of the higher priority areas of importance for members of the public. And so looking at that, the data from that survey, and then looking at the call volume data and understanding and recognizing the amount of stress and workload that our staff is under, that for me was more than enough evidence to support the request for a part-time bylaw officer. I do also want to echo that for a community of this density and this size, it's rare to have only one bylaw officer. Most communities of this density and size would have at least two, if not more. And so I think we've been lucky to have a community where we could essentially only require one bylaw officer for as long as we have, but we really are pushing up against the edges of that at this point in time.
Thank you, Mr. Edwards. You did have the floor, Councillor.
Thank you. And yeah, thank you for, just to clarify, we did receive some information this afternoon, I believe. The public hasn't had the opportunity to see that. And we did have some discussion about, I don't disagree that there's been an increase in volume, but again, what I'd be interested in having more information about is the types of calls. And I know we had some sort of conversation before the meeting on where those are coming from. And then it also, once you identify where they're coming from, whether there's opportunities to look for other kind of solutions. And I guess I don't know enough about it at this point to be completely comfortable, that's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Gannett for a second time. Are there any other first-time speakers? Go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, I mean, clearly I think staff has provided some rigor and some data. The anecdotal would have been from me. But I would just remind council that we hired a communications manager and HR personnel. Both valuable members of our staff have done great work, but there was equal, if not less, rigor for those hirings at a much higher cost at a time coming out of pandemic when we were not sure about finances. So I think if you have to be consistent in how we approach this. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. I'll speak briefly, and I won't support the motion. You will hear me make reference to belt tightening later as we carry on our discussions this evening, and I think new staff needs careful consideration. But as I referenced in my initial question on this topic through the staff, clarifying that this was actually raised last term. When there was an increase in calls, and staff thought that a reasonable solution other than hiring was to look to the assistance of staff from other departments. That has been tried. We've heard from the CAO this evening that is starting to tax those individuals in other departments who have other responsibilities. So I think what the information we've been provided today in terms of the increased calls and what staff have done to date to try and address this is I won't support the motion. I would support the additional hire. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. Those in favor? Opposed? The motion is defeated. Council, I don't know. This is we had this discussion when I was seeking reconsideration on another motion that will come forward to council, and part of the rationale was having 7 members of council. I was going to speak to this earlier this evening. I didn't know that it would come up at this time, but I will seek reconsideration of this at the meeting. We've already made a decision. I'll seek reconsideration of it next budget meeting. Councillor
Just
O'Toole?
as a point of clarification, that's going to impede me from making other recommendations. Our procedural rules are such that a 3-3 tie indicates that a motion fails. So deferring everything till a time when there are 7 people on council, to me personally, I find frustrating. I'm not keen to regurgitate the discussion again on the basis that a member of council can't be here. People can't be here. People get sick. People have other obligations. Our rules of order are such that a 3-3 vote is a tie. So I just wanted to state that, and it will deter me from moving motions if I feel like they're going to be a tie vote, because I don't want to revisit them in another budget meeting. I don't think it's respectful of the time of the chambers. I'll leave my comments there.
So your points are well taken, Councillor, and I don't see it, when I was thinking of speaking earlier this evening, I don't think we should automatically reference every decision. I think on decisions on larger items, we have passed 2 decisions tonight, and there was no opposition to that. And I'm not suggesting if there's any opposition that be reconsideration. I'm just considering in a 3-3 tie. So I will take your comments under consideration before I look to call reconsideration next week on this item, and I wouldn't want to deter council members from bringing up any matter this evening that's important. It won't automatically be referred to next week. Councillor O'Keefe.
Thank you. On that point, as you know, this is something I asked prior to council meeting in terms how was this going to be addressed tonight? And I think you said one of the options might be if there was a sense that it might be a tie vote that we could table or defer. I mean, I guess I have mixed feelings. I concur with much of what Councillor Rintoul says. On the other hand, it's kind of one of those things that the person who makes the motion first is, and if it's a split 3-3 tie, is going to sort of be unsuccessful. So, yeah, any other suggestions on how we might deal with that? Because I can see myself also being apprehensive about bringing something forward if it might be a split vote, and then that's the end of the discussion.
Thank you for your comments. I'm not going to make a comment or suggest a blanket approach to the rest of our meeting. I'll again ask councillors, given we are convened today with staff, to proceed on items, and I think it will be rather selective in terms of any items, depending on the vote being referred to the next budget meeting. Are there any other items on this list that council members would like to consider? While others are looking, I will move that the planning building part-time assistant be removed in just 2026.
Second.
Thank you. Again, I spoke briefly, or I spoke in terms of the CalFOR consideration to additional staff. We have had new staff in additional years. They've received careful consideration. We are in our most difficult budget year in the past 26 years. And I think we have made a significant decision in providing pre-approval, that is at a previous meeting, of a staff position for the major case disclosure clerk in the RCMP detachment. And I think at this time, while there is some rationale for this position, that we do, I do wish to pause this until next year. Turn to the seconder.
Nothing further.
Any further discussion? I'll call the question. Those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Or motion is defeated. Are there any other items for consideration? Okay, we'll leave the remaining items for consideration, we would be passing all of these supplemental requests, but we will leave that till our budget meeting next week.
Moving beyond the current year, we have supplemental requests for future years, and these are combination of one-time requests as well as ongoing requests. So in terms of one time, the largest is that Public Works admin building that I mentioned with the 2026 one time, but I think it's important to highlight that it does continue. And this, once again, is dependent on what happens with that capital item later on. There is the OCP review that is slated for 2029-30, and rather than budgeting a large lump sum at that time, we're proposing to set aside $50,000 a year over 4 years. Downtown parking study is slated for next year as well. And of course, none of these would proceed until council had another crack at them, either through next year's budget process or through a separate report from staff prior to that. Ongoing requests, the largest item is potential participation in RCMP Major Crime Unit. That is a placeholder largely. We know a proposal will be coming forward at some time, but we're not sure what year it's going to take effect. We're also looking at adding a fourth overnight firefighter midway through 2027 to enhance our capacity and make sure we have the response capability overnight. And then our final part-time assistant addition would be for human resources, and that would start in 2027. Once again, none of these would proceed without one more opportunity for council to weigh in.
Thank you, Mr. Hisik. Do council have any questions or wish to give any direction on these supplemental requests from 2027 to 2030? Councillor Keefe, please.
Thank you. So I'm looking at the downtown parking study for 50,000 in 2027, and in questions earlier to staff by email. So my question was, you know, whether there's still some outstanding items, what's still to be done on the study? Because my recollection was that we were going to wait for the initiatives to get done in the parking study, and then we would do another one to evaluate. So I just want to clarify with staff that there have been some, quite a few things done, but there's still, it looks like still quite a few things that need to be done, I understand, and that staff would hope to get those done in 2026. So I think there was stuff about consolidated passenger pickup and drop-off zones that still had to be done. And I'm not sure where we are with I think there was something in there too about accessible parking, and I'm not sure if that's been done.
Sorry, is that a
So I guess
question?
my question, I'm just wanting to confirm my understanding that there's still work to be done on the downtown parking study in 2026.
Through the mayor to Councillor O'Keefe, so yes, there are some items that have had progress from the past study. There are some other items that still need attention, and so a couple points. One is that the council would still be able to review and with staff recommendation for next year's budget, whether to actually complete this study in 2027, committing or having it in the plan now doesn't fully commit to completing that in 2027. And a new study, which would be 5 years after the previous one, might identify additional strategies or measures that are required as the circumstances have probably changed over the last 5 years.
Okay, thank you for that. So I think I'm in, it sounds to me just that we would still have, question through staff, we still have the opportunity next year to decide whether we want to do this. And I guess I'm asking because I don't know, like if it's in the budget now, would staff start planning for it at the end of 2026, seeing that, okay, so we could still review that in 2027.
So Councillor Keefe,
Okay.
tonight we have one-time requests for 2026, which we've deliberated. Many of those were in the budget last year when we were doing the 2025, and
Yep.
they come forward each year. So these will, as staff have already indicated, come forward next year.
Okay, I just didn't know how much forward planning they would do in requesting, going out for bids and that sort of thing.
Turn back to you, Mr. Hisik. Unless, sorry, I'll just, unless colleagues have any further question or comment. Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We are moving on to capital. As outlined last time, our total capital program for this year is 13.6 million, with 10.1 million of that in replacement plan projects. That is funded in a variety of ways, mostly from reserves, and very little of it is funded from property taxation. to be precise, 184,328, which is about 58,000 more than last year. So in looking to reduce the tax impact, the tax-funded projects are the likely place to start. So this could happen in the form of either eliminating or deferring one of the tax-funded projects or finding alternative funding for it. But on that latter point, as I do every year, I take a very careful look at all available funding sources, internal funding sources, and fund as much of the capital as I possibly can, leaving only the ones that I truly could not find funding for as tax funded. Having said that, the time when I do that is before year end is completed, so by the time we get further into year end, I might identify more or sometimes less available reserve funding that can be allocated to capital. So I've updated this table since the first presentation, and we did manage to find another 35,000 in Growing Communities Fund reserve funding that may be allocated to tax-funded capital. And I have a couple of suggestions for that when we move to the appropriate slide. Besides that, there are really no additional reserves that could replace tax funding without having longer-term impacts in the future years of the plan.
Mr. Hsick, just before going on, thank you for presenting this slide. I have two questions. And one is, can you just explain the reason for the color differences on the three groups of reserves?
Certainly, the pink section, the top section, are reserves that receive regular contributions, some of them through our own taxation, such as infrastructure, vehicle and fire replacement, computer. Those we take a portion of our property tax revenues and we transfer them to reserve. Ferry terminal, we take the lease payments from Washington State and put them into reserve. Agreements, that also is tax funded. Parkland acquisition is not tax funded per se, it's just every now and then we take contributions through development that are put into that reserve. The next section, off-street parking and alternative transportation, are somewhat similar to Parkland, so maybe they should be in the same color band, in that it's funds that we collect through development that we put into these reserves for specific purposes. Now the bottom portion, the green, those are more the, can I backtrack just a little bit?
Please do.
It's a bit more than just how we fund it. It's also how those things are allocated. So in the bottom green portion, we have the general capital reserve, which also is tax funded, but it's not earmarked for a specific purpose like those ones in the top section. So that the pink section is all earmarked for a very specific use, whether it's infrastructure replacement or the ferry terminal. Parkland acquisition can only be used for that purpose. Whereas things like general capital, we have some leeway in how we allocate that, as long as it's for a capital or a capital adjacent purpose. Even though we fund it, we can use it for a less constrained variety of purposes. Amenities is one of those also collected through development. But again, it has a fairly wide band of available uses. Land sale proceeds, we don't sell very much land. So what you see there is just the final remnants of the fire hall site sale. And once that's gone, which it likely will be at the end of this budget year, it's no longer until we potentially sell additional land in future. Growing Communities Fund, that was a one-time grant from the province, and we have a certain amount of time that we're supposed to allocate that all. I believe it should be used up by the end of March 2027. So there's very little of it left unallocated, and perhaps we can use up the last portion through decision tonight. CCBF, the former gas tax, we get annual contributions. We put those into a reserve for, once again, a very wide range of eligible uses. So really the color banding is not just how those are funded, but how widely the uses are defined. So the ones at the bottom, we have a little more leeway as to how we spend the money. The ones at the top, we really don't. Whatever we said when we established that reserve, that's how it must be used.
Thank you for the clarification, because I was thinking more on the, in the terms of how they're replenished, and would have grouped Parkland with Off-Street, but given your explanation, it makes sense the way it is. My second question is with regards to having the beginning balance in red for 4 of the funds. The purpose of showing them in red?
That's just to indicate that those balances have changed since the first presentation. So there have been slight changes to all 4 of those.
Okay, thank you. And sorry, the Climate Action Reserve, how are monies allocated to that reserve?
At one time, we established an annual reserve transfer, but then we were informed that we would be getting ongoing LGCAP funding from the province, Climate Action Plan funding, and at that time we elected to make use of those funds rather than setting aside our own.
Okay, and the provincial government has since stopped that,
Not as far as I'm aware.
no, but it's an application base rather than,
I have not heard yet that it will be discontinued. It was prepaid a couple of years back, so that we got 3 years at once.
Yeah.
Last I heard, they were still hopeful that it would be ongoing funding, but I until we hear confirmation, we're just hoping.
no, that's helpful for tonight's purposes. Thank you. Unless there's any other questions from colleagues, please continue.
Oh, I should just add, the fire vehicle reserve, that's also in red under the 2026 use column, because as indicated in the report, we might be bringing forward a slight amendment to that capital plan, whereby we need to make a deposit expenditure this year for a future acquisition that would see the bulk of the costs go out in 2028 or 9. Whereas the current plan indicated that deposit would be paid the year before acquisition. It's a much longer build time, so we have to get on with it.
One last question is, all of these columns are certainly helpful for our purposes. We have talked in the past about policy regarding desired levels in various reserves, and the top ones, I guess, would be the ones most appropriate for that. Do staff foresee through policy, through consideration of reserve level policy, actually adding a column in terms of what the desired reserve level would be in the longer term, or?
Well, certainly those policy decisions need to be brought to council as soon as possible. How they might be added to, I would have to modify this table to make it more meaningful by adding that, and I haven't given any thought to that yet.
It certainly comes out as a very strong message through the budget presentations and all the budget documents about how what our shortfall in general is with regards to reserves, and certainly the upper reserves, and we can certainly see that from the bottom line, if you will, in terms of replacing, well, our starting point is just over 13 million. We're taking 4 million, or we will be contributing through taxes $4 million into reserve, but we are taking nearly 11.5 million out of reserves, leaving a much lower ending balance. And one of the challenging things for council in any year is how much do you, we're cautioned against taking any more out of these reserves this year, but in general, over time, it's difficult for council to consider what is an appropriate level of taking out of any particular balance. I'll leave my comments there for now. Councillor Duncan.
I was just going to request a quick bathroom break before going on to the next capital.
I'll call a recess for 5 minutes to 8:55. Thank you. Okay, we'll look to Oh, sorry, we'll wait for Mr. Hisik. We'll reconvene our meeting, and I'll turn back to you, Mr. Hisik.
I'm sorry for my tardiness. Moving on to just a few tables showing how our reserves are being allocated in the 5-year plan. This is the 5-year plan for the Canada Community Building Fund, showing a wide range of projects where we're allocating it. We have a fairly good idea of what the annual contribution amounts will be from the federal government, and we've built that in. We do dip slightly into the red, I believe, by 2029. That's assuming that all these projects proceed as scheduled, and that's never really the case, so I'm not too worried about being temporarily in the red. By year 5, we're back in the black, and this has been a great addition to have this ongoing, regular, dependable funding that we can allocate for a wide variety of uses. In the initial years, it was heavily constricted in terms of it had an incrementality factor, so you could only build it for new things, despite the fact we had so many existing infrastructure pieces that needed care. But that was amended a number of years ago, and this is a great way for us to supplement our infrastructure funds, where the replacement is funded from the infrastructure reserve and the new component is funded from a reserve like this one. So it is possible if one of these projects is deemed to be non-essential, that this funding could be reallocated to what is currently tax funded. But I have a hard time picking out any of these projects in year 1. We have the amenity reserve, and this is very much dependent on development activity and bonus density development occurring. It's dried up the last couple of years. We have a couple of pending approvals that where funds might flow in once the building permit's issued. But you see we're in the red again by year 2029 because I'm not including funding that we do not yet have. I'm not projecting any receipts over the coming years. When we get it, we get it. Land sale reserve, it should be all used up once these 3 projects are completed. General capital reserve, essentially we set aside $150,000 and we use it for capital purposes of various natures. Last year we curtailed our annual contribution it's being reinstated this year. And if we were to eliminate it again, then some of these capital projects could not proceed or would need alternate funding. The Growing Communities Fund, which we have to use up by roughly this time next year, there is an ending balance, an available balance of roughly $35,000 that we might choose to allocate to a tax-funded project. So I would propose, similar to supplementals, that we cover the 2026 tax-funded capital. Council will have an opportunity to ask questions about other capital projects in 2026, and then we can focus a little bit on future years if council desires. So the tax-funded projects for 2026 are listed here. In terms of which ones might be eligible for Growing Communities Fund, I would suggest the downtown street lighting or the accessibility improvements. And we have a total of $35,000 to allocate, which could potentially cover all of one and a little bit of the other. And in terms of the projects on the bottom half of the slide in whatever color that is, mauve, the two least essential that might be deferred, I would say, are the Lochside Waterfront Walkway Hedge replacement and the Seaport Park stairwell to the beach. We would still like to carry those out, but they could potentially be deferred by a year to create a bit of space.
Thank you, Mr. Hisik. So, colleagues, if we could stay to projects on this slide, and we'll start with any questions. Councillor Gannett.
Or we're just asking questions at this point? Okay. So my question would be, if we were to remove what was a carry forward, I'm looking at the speed reader boards under the Growing Communities Fund, we could reallocate that 30,000 into items for here?
Sorry, is that project on here?
It was on the screen before, but it would be money that we could flow into these items.
Okay. Sorry, say that again?
If we were to cancel the speed reader boards, and I'm only saying that based on the survey results for the speed limits, kind of wondering why we have it, that we could use that $30,000 and then it would be in the Growing Communities Fund that could be used to help fund some of these items if we did not move forward with it?
Certainly that is possible, because we did exactly the opposite last year. It was a tax-funded item, and then we funded it from GCF, and now we're... Anyway, I would have to defer to my engineering colleagues to discuss the how essential that project might be.
Just before we do that, can we just turn to, I want to be flexible here, and given Councillor's rationale, can we just go to where the slide where that's showing?
Yeah, right there.
Okay, and so your point again, Councillor Gannett, is?
If we were to remove the speed reader boards from what was a carry forward to this year and reallocate that 30,000 to the next page where there are items that are tax funded, is that something that would, I mean, it would of course rely on staff saying that the importance of whether that should happen or not.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you.
Through the mayor to Councillor Garnett. So speed reader boards are valuable, serve a purpose, do have an impact, do slow traffic down at whatever the set speed limit is, whether that's still 50 or reduced to 30, wherever it is. We get lots of complaints about speeding traffic and aggressive traffic almost daily. That's what also leads to this request for speed humps. So speed reader boards are a bit more mobile than speed humps, so it's a good intermediate option. But certainly it's not mission critical, and if we wanted to reduce or defer, it just reduces our ability to add new speed reader boards. We also have, there's a bit of a risk if an existing one gets hit, funds to replace that, but yeah, certainly it can be deferred if needed.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you for the question. I'm working from the 2026 capital projects list that shows all funding sources, and I appreciate that the slide we were on was just 2026 tax funded. But I'm just not seeing speed reader boards on that 2026 capital projects list.
There are about 20 or so projects that will be carried forward from last year later. I didn't want to clutter the decision-making tonight with projects that have been approved and funded and will be brought forward at bylaw time, but certainly it shows up on the funding page.
Okay, thank you. So a question through to staff on speed reader boards is how many do we currently have in the community, and what would be the increase in number with this budget item?
To the mayor, so we figure we have 5 or 6 out there currently, and the 35,000 could probably fund another 3, and but we would probably keep at least one value, like 15,000, in reserve for in case one of the existing ones is damaged.
Okay, thank you. So, Councillor Garnett, I'll turn back to you. Do you wish to make a motion with regards to that, given your intention with regards to use of funds?
Not at this time, Mayor. I just wanted to clarify that that was an option. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So we're back to this list. Are there any questions on this list? I do have a question, and it is downtown street lighting. Which has a budget each year of 30,000, and this under the budget page 115, it says the annual budget depends on number of lights to be installed in a particular area. We estimate 5 lights at $6,000 per light. My question are these new lights in the downtown, or are we responsible for and is that the cost of replacing lights?
To the mayor, so these are mostly for replacements. One example listed is Seaport Place. We're working to replace older lights, older style lights on Seaport Place, and then it also remains as a contingency again in case a street light is hit. They're not inexpensive to replace, and not always recoverable, depending on the circumstances of the collision. And this is the kind of fund that, as with many funds like this, we only spend as needed and carry over funds that are unspent in a previous year.
Thank you. Thank you. So I can see, or I could take then that the budgeting that we're looking at in terms of $30,000 a year is based on the experience of having to replace lights in the downtown, and that's a necessary thing to do for safety. So, leave my question there, Councillor Rintoul.
Thank you, Mayor. Through you to staff, computer equipment fund, $5,000. I see on page 83, this is addressed as new positions, potentially, so I guess that's computer for new positions. And then elsewhere in the budget, we see the computer replacement plan, which called in 2026, I believe, if I'm reading it correctly, for $251,000, which is significantly higher than subsequent years in the subsequent years in the 5-year plan. Are we talking about 2 different things here? Equipment fund and
Well, the replacement plan is just for that replacement. Any new equipment, whether they're for new employees or just an enhancement that's important, we would pay out of this small 5,000 allotment.
and why is it so much higher, the 251,000 then under the replacement plan for 2026 versus subsequent years?
There's always a bit of a spike when we do our 4-year computer replacements, and we're slated to do those in 2026.
And when you do those replacements, is it plausible that there might be equipment that's not quite out of service as of yet to negate the need to spend $5,000 on a couple of new computers?
Potentially.
I'll move that we remove the $5,000 from the computer equipment fund.
Second.
Alternative movers for motivation?
Nothing more to say.
I'm good.
Seeing no further discussion, I'll call the question. Those in favor? Opposed? Councillor Duncan and Councillor Gurnett opposed. The motion carries. Councillor Gurnett?
Sorry, I wasn't sure we were moving yet on things, so I'll pose this with a question first through you to staff, and this is probably for Mr. Robinson, the waterfront walkway hedge replacement. This was deferred last year, because I remember because I did it, and noticing this year, and I'm assuming it looks like a fair bit of portions are dying, so I would like staff to weigh in on whether this can be deferred for another year or whether they think this should move forward this year.
Can you hear me all right, Councillor Garnett?
Yeah, good evening,
Yep.
Mr. Robinson. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, certainly the age of that hedge is getting to the point where it's hard to keep the height of the hedge down to the nominal height that we want to, in order to stop the complaints about the viewscape and to keep the ambience of that walkway where it's appropriate. So that was the plan, was to slowly in phases remove sections of the hedge and replant it out so that we've got another 10 years of good grooming and shaping that can go on. They're just getting a little leggy right now, and certainly the older they get, the heavier the wood in the base gets, the harder they are to maintain at a low height. So the idea was to phase that over a few times and take some of the areas that are in the most level of disrepair. But it's a nice to have, to be honest.
Thank you. I'll move that we defer the waterfront walkway hedge replacement.
Second.
Alternative movers for any further motivation?
No, Mr. Robinson spoke eloquently to it, so thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Duck? Seeing no further discussion, I'll call a question. Those in favor? That carries unanimous. Thank you. I have a question with regards to underground wiring. In the budget, it shows that of the $20,000, 10,000 is taxes, which we see on this screen, and then 10,000 is carry forward from previous years. Understanding the intent of having this underground wiring, and I gather it would be a fund as opportunities arise through redevelopment in the downtown to partner. Are there, we don't see what these smaller funds are. We certainly appreciate what the reserves are, but are we through to staff, are we anticipating projects in the downtown where we would be looking to partner on underground wiring?
Sometimes we go into budget with specific projects in mind. Sometimes it truly is opportunity funding, and the fact that only 10,000 is tax funded this year indicates that last year we didn't spend 10 of the 20, so therefore it's been carried forward. So I'll defer to plan engineering staff to let me know if they have anything in mind for this so far this year.
Sorry, another question is this underground wiring throughout the community or just in the downtown? I understood our program at one time was just downtown, but.
It's mostly downtown.
To the chair, so we don't currently have any locations known or identified or upcoming. These funds can also be used for repairs if there's an issue or someone is digging where they shouldn't be digging. And it's helpful, again, to have these contingencies available when the need arises, but there's currently no specific projects for this.
Okay, and so there isn't a fund per se, there's really just a 10,000 carryover from the previous year?
That's correct. We don't accumulate beyond what you see here, so if it's council's wish to eliminate the new tax funding for it, I would suggest that you leave the 10,000 that we've already set aside. So if something does come up, we can respond.
Yeah, again, not being aware of any projects, I mean, we kind of have a heads up in terms of the development process, particularly in the downtown, for any opportunities for underground wiring. So I would move that we remove the $10,000 from taxes and leave the 10,000 in the carry forward.
Second?
Don't wish to motivate further. Councillor Dack. Turn the call to question. Those in favor? Carries unanimous. Thank you. Are there any other items members would like to discuss? Questions or motions? Not seeing any. If you could continue, please, Mr. Hsick.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just as a reminder, we do have that 35,000 in Growing Communities Fund that might be allocated to,
Sorry, and you did have a recommendation. Can you repeat that? One or two, please?
okay, if I were to make a recommendation, I would say that downtown street lighting tax funding be reduced by 20,000 and replaced with general with Growing Communities Fund grant, and accessibility improvements funded entirely by the Growing Communities Fund for a total of 35,000 reduction.
So moved.
Second.
We have it moved and seconded. Thank you, Mr. Hsick, for the assistance there. I'll turn to the movers first.
No, I think that's a good application of those funds that we have from the Growing Communities Fund and good use. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Keefe?
Thank you. I think it's a good idea, but my question through staff is, I know that there's been more grants kind of pop up for accessibility improvements at the federal level. And so I'm wondering if we're going to be pursuing those. And I guess my thinking is, if there's a chance that we might get a grant for that, might it be better to pick another item from that list? Or does it make a difference?
Good question, Councillor. We will always pursue grants where we can, whether it's that one or for certain safety improvements. And I would say if a grant does materialize, we could make a reallocation later or do the final bit of funding with next year's capital plan.
Okay.
We'll use it all up.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Thank you. Please continue, Mr. Hsick.
Call the question.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'll call a question. Those in favor? Carries unanimous. Thank you.
Moving on to the non-tax funded capital. These are largely from reserves. Other sources are often grants, a little bit of cost sharing with North Saanich. There's a couple of projects that are funded by borrowing in the current capital plan, and that requires a little bit of attention, especially the Public Works Admin building. We should probably discuss and decide on a course of action for. These projects are listed in your binders. I don't have any slides because there are far too many projects to consider. But the floor is open should council have any questions or deliberations about 2026 capital that is non-tax funded.
Okay, so I'm working from page 64, pages 64 and 65. I'll turn to Councillor Gurnett first, then Councillor Rintoul.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm looking at the more detailed breakdown on page 141, but I'm gonna move removal of infrastructure plan item RDS 26003, which is the 5th Street curb and sidewalk from Malibu to Amelia. That is long-term debt funded.
Second.
I'll turn to you to move, Councillor.
Yeah, staff answered the question earlier. The question for me was whether the storm drain was the main impetus for the work or if it was the sidewalk, and it's the sidewalk. The storm drain is fine. Nice to have in that area for sidewalk because there is none from all the way from Malibu down Fifth to the ocean. And hopefully one day we'll be able to have it, but I see we're in areas where we're looking to try and justify for expenditures. I think this is one that we can let go at this time and save whatever savings there would be on the debt financing. Thank you.
Thank you. Turn to the seconder.
Yeah, it's a good area. As staff pointed out, this has a country feel to it. I live in the area and walk this area every day. And all the streets, with the exception, I think, of Amherst has a sidewalk on one side for part of it. The rest don't, and I think it still works, and I don't think we need to move in that direction yet. Thank you.
Thank you. So I just want to clarify. I'm picturing this this area. So there is currently no sidewalk on either side between them. I won't support this motion. Sorry, I do have a question first. Is this sidewalk, I do not believe was in the priority 20 sidewalks in the active transportation plan. I'm sorry for just posing that now, but I didn't appreciate that this was coming up.
I'm sorry, Mr. Mayor, I don't have that plan in front of me. It's something we could potentially clarify prior to the next meeting. With some of these more complicated projects, rather than outright removal at this time, staff could be directed to provide additional information for the next deliberation, and then a more informed decision may be made.
Yeah, I'll speak to, the motion is on the floor, so I'll speak to the motion. I'm not supportive of removal of this sidewalk. While we were doing the active transportation plan, I walked through that area on a regular basis as well, and there are residents who it is a very regularly used, and it's a matter of safety. The gravel shoulders on the one side slope because the properties slope down on the to the west. It is level on the east side. Interestingly, there's been 2 property redevelopments, but because we didn't have it in our plans, those properties didn't, this is within the last 5 or 6 years, those properties weren't required to put sidewalks in. I questioned it at the time. But it's a very active walking area, and I think for safety, we should have a sidewalk on one side or the other. So I would be curious to know whether it was in the active transportation plan. I seem to recall bringing it up, given that we did prioritize, or 20 new sidewalk projects were prioritized in there. I don't remember that. I do know Amelia was, Amelia from Third to Rest Haven was in the priorities and pretty high up in the priorities, but so with that in mind, seeking that additional information, I would move we refer it to next week budget for additional information from staff.
Second.
Nope.
Mr. Murphy.
To the mayor, so we're looking through the active transportation plan here, and it is the number 2 priority in the plan.
That stretch is the number 2 priority. Okay, I won't support removing it from the plan. Further to my other motivation, I think the priority setting in that plan was important in terms of new sidewalks in areas where there is no sidewalk. Mr. Hisik.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just since we're on the topic, the staff report did identify that we don't have money set aside for $1 million in active transportation expenditures per year. We've been making the best use we could out of our alternative funding, like gas tax, like the land sale reserve, but those are running out. So that's why borrowing is shown as the funding source here. It's just one option. If we deem some of these active transportation projects worthy of proceeding and there's no alternative funding, we could consider adopting a loan authorization bylaw for X amount, which we would draw down upon once projects are specifically approved. throwing a number out there, we could approve a $5 million loan authorization and just chip away at that when we have an essential project that has no other funding source. And that could be one way to tackle the active transportation plan.
Thank you. I mean, a slight bit more motivation is that, we were very keen on the active transportation plan, in particular the intersection improvements and sidewalk improvements. And the sidewalks were prioritized. I believe that the top few in the list were in corridors, that is shorter segments, that had no sidewalk. We've heard the limitation on the limitations in terms of lack of reserve funds in being able to move forward at the pace we anticipated when we approved the active transportation plan, that is spend $1 million a year on improvements. And here we are seeking to take out the second priority for a new sidewalk in the community. I certainly want to appreciate the new sidewalks and additions to sidewalks in infills that staff have done over the years. They're noticeable in our community, but I won't support this removal. Councillor Keith?
Thank you. A question through you to staff. My recollection and looking at the project summary, this came about in regards to considering that there was going to be that development at 2060 Birch. That's my understanding correct about that?
That's a different street,
Okay.
Councillor.
Okay, disregard, looking at the wrong one. Thanks.
Any further discussion? Councillor Keith, you still have your mic. Councillor Garnett.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Just to clarify, the reason I started looking at this particular aspect is not because I don't believe it's important, but further to the latest staff report that was provided, staff has indicated that it's been a real challenge to provide funding for our active transportation plan projects within our community. And so we have to me, it just comes down to, like, we're in a very difficult budget. Where do we find areas where we can? And yes, I agree that it could be considered a safety consideration. It's why it's high on the list. But our active transportation plan in its entirety is aspirational. And so I think we have to take the context of the time we're in and what we're trying to accomplish here, and minimize impacts to taxpayers. And would I love to have it go forward? Absolutely. But I'd love to get a BMW. That's not happening either for me because I just can't afford it. So we have to think in terms of what the community can handle capacity-wise. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Duck?
And just a question through to staff. You said it was the number 2 priority. What's the number 1?
Lockside Drive, Iroquois Park to
Microphone.
It was the Lockside Drive improvements from Iroquois Park to Whaler.
Okay, thank you.
Seeing no further discussion, I'll look to call the question. Sorry, Ms. Nelson.
So just to be clear, we had a referral motion moved and seconded. So if you want to deal with it, or if you're okay with agreeing to take that off, or
I'm agree with. I'll look to the seconder to remove the referral given the additional information provided by staff.
Agreed.
Thank you. So we now have the main motion on the table to remove the item from the budget. If there's no further discussion, I'll look to call the question. Those in favor? Opposed? Councillor O'Keefe, myself, and Councillor Duncan, the motion is defeated. Councillor Rintoul?
Do I not still have the floor, Mayor?
Yes, you do. On a new item, go ahead.
Thank you. And these suggested deferrals or removals are not tax impacted, but I'm looking at maintaining the strength of our reserves through these particular motions. RDS 15006, 7th Street sidewalk from Breathour, or sidewalk from Breathour to Henry on 7th, and to defer that project.
Do we have a seconder?
Second for discussion.
It's in front of the Sydney Elementary between
Just
Breathitt.
point of order, could you repeat that number again, which one you're talking?
It's on page 117 of the binder.
And the number?
RDS
RDS
15006.
15506.
Sorry, do we have a seconder? Councillor Duck, thank you. I'll turn to the movers.
Yeah, we just initiated speed limit changes in and around that area, and I think, so I think putting this last particular portion of sidewalk in is a little less time sensitive at this point in time. And it will help to keep our reserves at a healthier balance. Thank you.
The seconder?
Nothing to add.
Thank you. I'll speak in favor of this. There is a sidewalk on the other side of the street that is heavily used. And I think, I think it functions well with the other safety precautions we have in the area. Seeing no further discussion, I'll look to call the question. Those in favor? That carries unanimous. Thank you. Councillor, you still have the floor.
Page 122 of the budget binder, RDS-19-012. This is the sidewalk from Malaview, from 3rd to 5th. It's that last portion between the new development. Again, same idea behind that is to keep our reserves in a healthier balance.
Second.
Sorry, what page is it on, Councillor?
It's on page 122, or 122 of the budget binder.
Thank you. Sorry, did I turn to the movers? Yeah, I did. And Councillor Duck, you're good? I'll support this. Again, there is a well-used sidewalk on the other side of the street. Just in general, you know, when we did the active transportation plan and the priorities in the plan were for sidewalks in heavily traveled areas where there are no sidewalks. So I'm supportive of this. Any further discussion?
Clarification on this one.
Yeah.
3rd to 5th on Malaview has sidewalks on both sides now.
Sorry, 3rd to 5th, Mr. Murphy, please.
Through the chair to council. So the description on this one, I believe, is inaccurate. So there is, as far as I know, a new sidewalk on Malaview from 3rd to 5th, and so the next segment would actually be from 5th to other way, 5th to Rest Haven.
Sorry, it is complete between,
The first segment between 3rd and 5th is complete, but going the other way from 3rd to Rest Haven is
5th to Rest Haven.
5th to Rest Haven is not complete, and that's what these funds would be for if approved.
on the south side. So knowing that, Councillor Garnett, as the mover, is it your intention to remove that sidewalk now that it's
Yes,
clarified?
because there is a sidewalk on the north side. So I'll keep moving the same motion, just for a different portion of the street. Same number, but just different description.
Second.
I remain supportive. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Carries unanimous. Thank you. Councillor Garnett?
This one, I would like to ask a question first, and it's the Epcota Barnes portion on page 142 of the binder, RDS 26004. And I had some conversation with staff about this one, and we do have the potential to put, they were talking about a footbridge across the ditch that leads to the flight path. There used to be one. There was a green footpath. It just disappeared. I don't know who removed it or why, and that's why the initial request from the neighbors on Barnes came forward for some kind of sidewalk or something. And I think we talked about a crosswalk, but staff had concerns on where we would put it in terms of safety, because you can't really have it coming off the corner of as Sterling becomes Ocean. So is there a place we think we could safely put a crosswalk that would, and then have a footbridge in there that the VAA would not remove? We'd have to have a conversation with them, obviously, so it doesn't go disappearing.
Through the chair to Councillor Garnett. So yes, that was a moment's thought of perhaps an alternative to the sidewalk along Ocean Ave. Could be a new pedestrian crossing, but then there is a ditch to cross and would need a little bridge as well. So yeah, no idea if the airport would support it, no idea if that would meet safety standards, including the crosswalk position. So that would take more time to review if that's a realistic alternative.
Okay. So, what I will move then in place of that is that we, it's not gonna be the exact motion that's in here, what's proposed in here, that we would do curb and gutter and sidewalk from Breathour Park to Barnes.
Sorry, you're looking to amend this
Yeah,
project?
I was trying to find a way to not do the whole project to save on, because it's not supposed to go forward to 2028, but there's 100,000 planned for this year, which I'm assuming is design and I'm sorry, I'm looking at staff
That's
and they're
correct.
nodding. So, moving forward, but sort of paring back the actual total project, instead of going all the way from EPCO, or from all the way from Kenora to Barnes, that we would go from Breathour Park to Barnes with the sidewalk and gutter.
Sorry, for clarification, Councillor, so the $100,000 that's in the budget for 2026, we're understanding, and maybe look to staff, that is for design work on the larger project? So you're looking to scale back the level of design work, Councillor?
Well, I'm assuming naturally when the project scaled back, the design work would scale back as well. Is that correct?
Through the chair to Councillor Garnett. So yes, we could scale back design. However, it would only be savings on the 100,000 in 2026.
But this would impact the future of the
A-
full
and
project
then
for
the future
2028.
spend
Yeah, that's
as
what I'm
well.
looking
Yep.
more mainly to.
Yep.
Yeah.
So we're not setting a limit at this time? You're not changing it from 100 to 80, or does staff have a recommendation?
Well, I mean, it would be up to staff. I mean, I'm not sure what the cost would be reduced to, but would staff like to weigh in on?
Could staff look to bring that back next week,
Yeah, or in 2 weeks' time.
or 2 weeks' time?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so there was no motion on the floor. Thank you for the request. Councillor, do you wish to continue?
One last item, Mayor, and it's to do with, on page 121 of the budget, and it's RDS 19002, and it's the Kenora project. And staff I had some conversation with staff on this earlier. Not impacting the design for the 100,000 for this year would stay in for the design. It's just moving forward. Staff had indicated that we could do not necessarily the full gamut of work that was originally planned for, but just the paving and the drainage improvements, as opposed to doing the whole raised sidewalk and all the cutouts and everything else in terms of the long-term 5-year plan. Does staff need a recommendation for that, or do we just leave the budget as it is for 100,000 and not look at the deeper details moving forward from 2027 outwards?
Sorry, if I could pose a question through to staff, is this 100,000 solely for design?
Design and engagement.
Design engagement?
Yeah.
And sir, you have a question?
I think
Mr.
Mr. Murphy's going to answer.
Through the chair to Councillor Garnett. So yes, I think the best approach would probably be if we can keep the majority, if not all of that design and engagement money for 2026, then we would certainly commit to doing concepts that have options, right? So less work, more work, and then bring the decision back for the actual spend in the subsequent years.
Great, thank you very much. That's it for me, Mayor, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. I'll turn next to Councillor Rintoul.
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Hissack, a few pages back, there was a reference there to, I guess, the gas tax funded projects. Okay, so I see a portion of that White Birch Road cul-de-sac improvement, $93,000 is coming from there. That project is on page 138. So it's being proposed to be funded from multiple sources, one of which is the Canada Community Building Fund, former gas tax. Through the mayor to staff, the indication on page 138 is it's cost shared with the developer of 2060 White Birch. Councillor Keith mentioned this briefly as in posing a question to staff. Is that project moving forward, because the clock's ticking on it, number one. Number two, whether it's moving forward or not, because it's so late, I suppose, in terms of advancing. I would rather contemplate deferring this to a future year. So I'll pause there for a response, and that might be better for planning staff.
Thank you, Councillor. I'll turn to staff. Just taking a moment here. Mr. Murphy?
Through the chair to Councillor Rintoul. Planning says that there is a building permit application in progress, under review right now, so it does sound like a real development, as real as any are. And but we're not sure construction. Yeah, we don't know their timing. Could be this year, could be next year.
I just have an additional question. And so given a project like that would take approximately 2 years, that White Birch project, would staff be doing the improvements early in the, if the development was to start this year, early in the development, or would be one of the concluding parts of the project, and we would be doing it in conjunction with the proponent?
To the mayor, yes, so we were just discussing that point, that, yeah, the frontage works would come at the end, so there's almost no chance of that in 2026.
So I'll move that this item be deferred to 2027.
Second.
Further motivation? Oh, sorry, Mr. Hisik?
Thank you. I think we've discussed in the past, just because a project's in the budget doesn't mean it'll proceed this year, but if it's not in the budget, then it definitely will not proceed. So given that there's some uncertainty about timing, I would strongly recommend, like, there's no tax impact here. We won't do the work until the timing is right. It would be our preference to keep it as is.
It wouldn't be mine from the standpoint that $93,000 from the Canada Community Building Fund, perhaps we could revisit allocating it if there was anything in tax-funded capital that could have been utilized from that $93,000.
Fair enough, but just keep in mind that in year 4 we're in the red, so it could be a temporary reallocation and it could impact something down the road.
Thank you. I'm still comfortable supporting this.
Okay, so we do have it moved, and the seconder was Councillor Duck. I'll turn to the seconder first.
Yeah, I continue to support this. I think it's not, as Councillor Rintoul's indicated, it's not removing it forever. It's moving it to another year. As staff have indicated, that nothing's going to happen this year, and certainly with it, walking through there today, we're a long way from that cul-de-sac being completed in 2026, and even possibly not even in 2027, given current building schedules. So I'd see this as a good idea. It's not putting it away, it's just moving it to another year. Thank you.
Councillor O'Keefe, please.
Thank you. Yeah, this was one I was looking at, and it says cost shared with the developer. So the costs that are reflected here are what we would anticipate our costs to be?
Through the chair to Councillor O'Keefe, so yes, this would essentially be the other half of the call.
Okay. And then my other question is, I can't remember, because that was a long time ago, whether there was bonus density or amenity charges that we would be receiving as a result of that development. And if so, are those things, would we have enough to use that to pay for our share of that project, or at least at 93,000?
Good evening, thank you. Through the mayor to Councillor O'Keefe. Yeah, this property, there was a zoning amendment involved in the development. There were conditions of that zoning. One of the conditions was that the applicant do some of the work to improve this cul-de-sac road, which was just being discussed. The zoning amendment 2 brought in a base and bonus density to treat this property like the other zones around it. So there would be a bonus density or amenity payment received at the time of building permit. I don't have the number offhand or the zoning bylaw exact text, but I believe there would be an amenity payment received as part of the building permit fees for this project.
Is that something that you could let us know about?
Microphone, please,
Sorry,
Councillor.
is that something you could get some more information and bring back to on the 16th?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, okay, thank you.
Thank you. So we have the motion on the floor. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. Those in favor? Opposed? Councillor Duncan is opposed. The motion carries. Councillor Until, you have the floor.
Sure, motion arising from that, as opposed to, council maybe trying to cherry pick that $93,000 from the community building fund. I'll move, if staff would like or prefer it, that staff report back with suggestions of how that money could be applied to tax-funded capital projects for the 2026 budget.
Second.
What was that?
Do staff have any comment before
Clear.
we proceed?
That's perfect. Thank you very much.
My pleasure.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call a question. Those in favor? That carries unanimous. Thank you. Okay. Any other discussion? I'll begin with some questions. It's the utility kiosk beautification wraps, which is on page 119 of the detailed budget plan. So we have done quite a bit of utility wrap improvements with First Nation themes over several years. Sorry, just getting to the page here. It indicates this is part of a long-term program. I'm just, can staff indicate what kiosks we're looking at doing? I think all of them have been done in the downtown. Good evening, Mr. Newcomb.
Good evening. I don't have the exact kiosks, but we do have a slate of, I want to say around 10 that still have yet to be wrapped that are on the to-do list essentially.
So these are ones that haven't been done yet?
Most of them haven't been done yet, and then there's a few replacements where the wrap is getting quite old and starting to peel, so that would, I think there's just one of those, I believe.
Thank you. I'm turning to the pathway improvements, Beacon Avenue West to Jean Place, and it's it's RDS 25001. I don't have the page number here, but staff do indicate that this may be included in the 2180 developer improvements that they will do. And I think the page says that it's under discussion with the developer. It's a $60,000. Sorry, is it 60?
Page 131.
Yeah, page 131. Thank you. Can staff comment on what discussions have to occur with the developer as to whether or not we incur that cost?
Thank you. To the mayor, so again, this property, 2180 Beacon West, just to the east of this pathway, was the subject of a zoning amendment. So one of the conditions of zoning was that the property owner cover some of the work on that pathway. I'd have to look up again the wording of the exact text of the zoning bylaw in terms of is it the surface of the path and the associated drainage improvements for surface water, but what the detail is. But it was something that was secured at the time of zoning amendment. So we can look into that and get back to you.
Thank you. My next is the two significant park improvements, Rathdown Park redevelopment on page 167 at $550,000 and Philip Breather Park design and park improvements for 2026 at $471,000. And there's another park improvement, smaller improvement elsewhere, and I'm just not seeing it. It's in this list somewhere. At any rate, it's funded entirely out of the, I'm just gonna turn it to your 167.
It's out of the growing community reserve.
It's funding out of the Growing Community Reserve. We heard earlier tonight that the Growing Community Reserve has a limitation on it of perhaps March of 2027. I would think that this has to be the most significant park improvements in a given year for the municipality that I can think of. I mean, there are washrooms in both parks being referred to. There's multi-sport or sport court installations in both, public washrooms, paving of parking in the Philip Breather Park. I'm just, given we're facing our highest budget increase, this is, I think, more than double than the park improvements we've done in a year. It's nice to have, but I'm not supportive of moving forward with all of that, those park improvements. Now, I appreciate, and it was learned this evening at the beginning of the meeting, that there's the limitation on the grant funds of 2027. I think we need to support, and I think the community would be supportive if they knew we were facing a 12% increase. And we were looking to spend $1 million, $1.1 million on these park improvements. While they're not tax funded, can they, if these were scaled back to some degree, could that reserve fund be used on other projects, either tax funded or I'm going to suggest reserve funded, but that's another piece that I want to, that I'll have to explain in a few minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Certainly they could be, and I would suggest that's another item we could report back on in more detail with some additional parameters for council to consider.
Okay. Would you like a motion to that effect?
Sure.
Okay. That staff bring back options for reducing park improvements and allocating funds to other projects.
Second.
Any further discussion? Councillor Keefe?
Thank you. I'll support that motion if it refers to all park improvements. So not just Breather Park and not just Rathdown. And I think you didn't make reference to those specifically, so I presume it's all parks. And the reason I say that is that traditionally we've put a lot of money into parks at Iroquois, and Tallista downtown, closer to town, and community parks like, Rathdown is in my neighborhood, and that's an area, there's a lot of families in that area. That's a very well-used park, and so if we're gonna look at scaling back on parks, I think we should look at all of the parks and look at what we've got there and prioritize accordingly. Because I don't think it's fair for, neighborhood parks to take the hit.
So
Those are my thoughts.
I did mention earlier there was a third park, and the third park is the Tallista Park picnic shelter replacement, which is right above it.
And there's also
At 148.
the dog park at Iroquois.
And sorry,
And I can't remember, I think there was a few other, I can't remember off the top of my head.
okay, so, Mr. Isick?
Certainly in the report back to council, we could discuss why these are the ones prioritized and remind council about the Parks Master Plan, having identified these and a couple of others as the first priorities. But yes, we'll cover all of that.
Yeah, that would be
Ms.
great.
Ms. Nelson, could you read back the motion, please?
That staff that staff report back with options for reducing park improvements and allocating funds to other projects.
Okay, so the intention was to be able to capture any other parks? Councillor Duck, please.
As I second this, I just, I'm a daily user of Rathdown. And within that report, I think what would be interesting is to see it, a scaled version of it versus all at once, and spreading over a couple of years. And Rathdown Park, for example, is a floodplain right now. You can't use it 6 months of the year because of the water, the collection on it. And so the utilization of that park becomes diminished because of, you essentially have the pathway to walk, and that's about it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor, and if I may, before turning to Councillor Gurnett, it is a point I wish to make, because in reading the description of that capital project, it does make reference to the remaining significant drainage issue there. We had one of our first tree planting there, and unfortunately we've lost a number of trees due to the drainage issues there. And so just a suggestion further to Councillor Duck is that be a priority. The drainage in Rathdown as an improvement be a priority. Councillor Gurnett.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, I will support this motion, but within the context that looking back at the Parks Master Plan and the from my perspective, the importance of these two parks in relation to trying to attract families to our community, and that's why it was important for me at the time. So, and having this opportunity with this kind of funding that may not exist for a very long time into the future based on economic conditions at senior levels of government, I am a little concerned that we would not move forward. And I realize it's a lot, but we need a community that's more balanced in age, and these are things that attract families to neighborhoods, and without that, this community remains on the heavy side of the aging demographic, and I do have concerns about that, so thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Seeing no further discussion, I'll call the question. Those in favor? Thank you. That carries unanimous. I'm next going to turn to my big idea, or what I'm calling an idea. I'll just call it an idea, not a big idea. Could we turn to this slide, please, Mr. Hissig? That's the one. Thank you. So as I made reference earlier on, we can see that we're in a challenging position with regards to maintaining our reserves, but not only maintaining our reserves, but actually replenishing them to levels that would be desirable in the coming years. Having said that, this is the most challenging budget of the year, and further to public comments, but just my own motivation is that having a 10.7% increase last year and a 12.4% this year, and in the context of the economic uncertainty and the challenges single working people face, families face, seniors face, and businesses face, that we need to try to tighten our belt on this. We've heard from staff on what led us to this increase today, and there are certainly there's certainly good information there. However, the public does expect us to, in our fiduciary responsibility, to go through the budget in all areas. And just as an example, we looked at the supplemental requests, 2026 one-time and 2026 ongoing. The combined amounts of those two, and so that's all of the operating budget that we've looked at so far. And if you combine the one-time supplemental requests and the ongoing supplemental requests, it comes to just over $1 million. Our operating budget is $26 million this year. So while we've reviewed $1 million of the $26 million operating budget, we haven't carefully gone over other aspects of the operating budget. It is on Mr. Hissig's list for us to give consideration, but this is part of a larger motivation about the budget, is that we have to look at all areas of the budget for potential belt tightening. in terms of this slide in the capital reserves, understanding the position we're in capital reserves, and I appreciate Councillor Gurnett actually going first and looking at projects that help, I think it was your term, to preserve reserves or maintain healthy reserves, is we are going to collect, under this plan, $4 million in reserves. If we are able to defer or cancel reserve-funded projects, there is the potential to reduce the reserve contribution, that is the amount we're taxing to replace, not in equal amount, because you can see that it's not a one-for-one. It's not a one-for-one replacement. What we're taking out, we're only replacing about a third or just over yeah, we're replacing about a third. So my concern is, for example, in three of the funds, is the vehicle replacement fund is $675,000. There's $345,000 in transportation vehicles, $230,000 in parks vehicles, and $100,000 in sewer vehicles. These amounts tend to be in the hundreds of thousands of dollars each year. My standard question, I think, for the first 7 years is how are we looking in terms of replenishing our fleet? And Mr. Robinson has always been excellent in his answers. Is how are we looking to electrify for that, which could potentially reduce operating costs? I'm not going to ask that question this evening because I think staff have taken the message over in previous years. But that level, and I didn't send the question to staff to ask, how many vehicles are we replacing in those three areas for $675,000. I understand we have, a plan for replacement that tries to be most cost effective in terms of what the asset value remaining of the vehicle we're giving up and the cost of acquiring a new vehicle. But I'm going to turn to private business, which I've been in Sydney, a private business operator for 25 years as a landlord and a business operator. And in the numbers that were provided earlier this evening, the average commercial business tax. So we have just over 800 businesses operating from commercial or industrial space. We also have 130 businesses operating from home-based businesses, so they're not paying commercial taxes. But of these 800 businesses, the annual tax in 2025 was $7,800. In 2026, it's $8,767. That doesn't include what these businesses are going to be paying in terms of their CRD tax, their school board tax, and that sort of thing, which we don't have a control over. But suffice it to say, while $8,700 sounds a lot in taxes, it's actually a lot more than that. And businesses that are facing challenges because of economic uncertainty, staffing challenges, and on, supply chain challenges. It's not whether or not $967 annual increase is appropriate, is money for value. It's how are you paying the first $8,700 before you have to pay the additional $967. And quite frankly, if businesses don't tighten their belts, they go out of business. And we see long-standing businesses do that, and they're not going out of businesses just because of increase in property taxes. We have a long-time business in Sydney, some 30 years, going out of business because of the size of the rent increase. That is the predominant factor that they've disclosed publicly. So there are a combination of factors, but this puts pressure on local businesses. I've indicated earlier, it puts pressure on single people working, it puts pressures on families, it puts pressures on seniors with fixed incomes. But I just want to indicate or illustrate by use of those numbers that that for these 800 businesses that we're implementing this tax increase, it's very significant. And for all of the taxpayers in the community, we have to look to tightening our belt as best we can. And here's the idea, and that is to try and reduce by, I don't know what the reductions are this evening based on, and I'm not asking for staff to quickly calculate them. We'll find out next week where we're at. But coming in tonight was try to reduce it by $200,000 to $300,000 in the contribution. To do that, you would have to reduce perhaps double that in capital projects. Now, Councillor Garnett has done that through motions of pausing on sidewalk improvements and that sort of thing. The thing is it means that we're actually going to defer some of those contributions to taxes to future years. But as we saw on the first or second page of our budget package, we're starting at 12.4 this year. A starting point so far, and it's not entirely accurate, is 6 point something next year, is to try to balance out. I'm not suggesting just taking 12 and 6 and dividing by 2, but personally, I really feel we need to get to below 10% in the tax increase this year. We have to demonstrate. It will be communicated throughout the community that we were at a 12.4 starting place, and that whether or not we were able to get below 10%. How did I pick 10%? I picked 10% actually starting at the other end. In terms of the factors that we cannot control. We cannot control the downloading of the call service. There are labor agreements that we have, and there are increases. So we've made a decision to go ahead and hire at a cost of approximately $50,000 for 2026, a very important position in our RCMP detachment. These are must-haves, or these are factors that we cannot control. The increased costs, other than the downloading of the call service and that have you, we are faced with increased costs in both our police service and our fire department service, because we're a growing community and because we need to add resource to those departments, or our contract with RCMP is increasing. So the public, quite frankly, would like to see us have a tax increase much closer to inflation, and I'm not going to get into a motivation or discussion about inflation, but much lower than when we're starting. The reality is we're not going to get down to 6% or 7% because of the downloaded costs from the provincial government. But again, I want to see us earnestly try to reduce the budget by at least 3 percentage points to get below 10%. And I would ask, I'll make this as a motion, that if the idea that I've put forward, if it is understood by staff, I'm not asking for staff as to whether or not they're supportive of it or not, but to make a motion for staff to bring back information on trying to move in this direction for our next budget meeting. Mr. Issig?
Understood, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor O'Keefe?
Thank you. I'm just seeking clarity on where you were thinking that 3%. You started talking about, the need to look at all aspects of our budget, and you mentioned the 26 million, and then we started talking about reserves. So I'm not sure, when you're talking about the 3%, are you talking about that coming from reserves, or are you looking to staff to look at their operating budget of 26 million and come up with 3%?
Okay. Again, I don't know what the percentage decrease is now. It may be up to % or so. So I'm going to suggest 2%. Right now, a percent is about $160,000. So you're looking at $320,000. So I'm looking at, just as an example, of reducing the contribution from 4.06 million, reducing that by 320,000. But to do that, you have to remove. I don't want to harm the reserve balances. I want to remove capital projects. or capital spending such that, or defer capital spending such that we can get that increase. The areas, so thank you, you posed a question or a reminder to me. The areas I think that we should consider are the largest ticket items, if you will, and as I say, it's $675,000. The computer the computer replacement, I understand how expensive computer replacement is, that the policy is 4 years. But quite frankly, private business, while they would like to replace the network, and I've replaced the network in my business 3 times in the last 25 years, is yes, there's best practices in terms to when to do that, but is there an opportunity to tighten our belts? Do we need to have to tax for a contribution of $115,000 into the computer reserve? Rather than me making a recommendation that we don't do that tonight, I'm proposing this idea and asking staff to report back on it. Does that help?
I think so. So just for clarity for myself, so you're looking for this amount to come from a reduction of tax contributions into reserves, not necessarily, you referenced the $26 million operating budget, which includes sort of not just capital projects, but other operating things that we normally don't look at.
No, this
but
is all capital at this point. I
Okay.
know I started off with a remark with regards to what we've considered so far this evening, $1 million out of a $26 million operating budget. This has nothing to do with that. This
Okay.
is just on the capital side.
Okay, thanks for the clarification.
Thank you. Sorry, is that a
Point of-
motion?
Yeah, point of order, are you making a motion?
Ms. Nelson?
Just from listening to the discussion, I'm not sure. I have something written down as that staff report back with information on reducing the now I wasn't sure. Are you referring to the 2026 contributions to reserves?
Reducing the 2026 contributions and 2026 capital plan. So I would not want to see the ending balances change on,
The ending balance would change.
Yeah.
oh, sorry.
But you don't want to see the ending balance changing simply because of reduction to contributions. Like you want a corresponding reduction to capital.
And in fact, I suggest that because of the ratio of capital being used versus capital being replaced, that it's gonna be a higher proportion of capital projects reduced to the amount reduced in contribution. So technically, you could leave the ending balances, but it would the same, but it would make it a greater challenge. Do I have a seconder?
Second for discussion.
Thank you. I won't motivate any further. I'll turn to the seconder.
I'd be interested in seeing the staff report, because I think that's a good way in which we can approach this. We're not challenging our operations, but we're looking, okay, how can we defer expenses a little bit or reduce expenses in the capital area, and but without, as Councillor Garnett indicated, reducing our reserves any further. And I think that's the important balance point, is that we need to find a way in which we don't tamper with the reserves going forward, so they're still there, but find ways in which we can reduce the tax implication of funds. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Rintoul, please.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, I'm supportive. I guess I was inclined to think that through the series of motions that were supported, that Councillor Garnett made, as well as the one that I made around White Birch, because not all of that funding was from the Growing Community Grant Fund. It was from reserves as well, that we've already accomplished some of this tonight. I don't know that there's been a running total, but I guess the report will advise that some of this, I think, has been some of what you're intending has been accomplished tonight, and perhaps there's more that can be done to achieve the level of tax increase that you're seeking. So I'm supportive, but I'm inclined to think we've done some of that tonight already. Thank you.
Thank you. Seeing no further discussion, I'll call the question. Those in favor? Carries unanimous. Thank you. I'll turn it back to you, Mr. Isick, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm getting the signal that we're done with capital for now. And all of that I understood thoroughly.
Thank
All
you.
I can say is, as the staff report identified, we have a lot of work ahead of us to make our 5-year plan affordable. And my primary focus for the next budget meeting will mostly be on 2026 tax reduction, because some of this will require a much longer time frame for us to fully work through. So I'm going to concentrate on the most immediate task at hand and let you know what you might expect later in the year. So we've gone through parts of the operating budget. We've run out of tax mitigation measures to further reduce. I was going to give you an opportunity to ask questions about the general operating budget that we haven't already discussed before moving on to utilities, if it's council's wish.
Sorry, I do want to make a further comment, further to my remarks about us reviewing about $1 million of the $26 million operating. I don't have the page in front of me, but when you look at staff wages and salaries, and you look at contracted services, a significant portion of the operating budget are those two items, and it is understandable given the services that we provide to the community. So I didn't want to suggest that it's like a capital budget and you can just, take a lot of stuff out of it automatically. It's a different budget, very different budget.
If there are no questions about general operating, I'd like to move on to the water utility. We covered most of this last time, but just a quick overview. The reason we have increases are we're upping our transfer to the infrastructure reserve for asset renewal to match the infrastructure levy, and that was part of our long-term rate structure plan. The other primary factor for an increase was the CRD bulk water rates, which went up 7%, and that corresponds to what we're recommending for user rates. So we've heard lots about our successful water rate structure. We recently completed a similar look at sewer. So I don't have the water rates in front of me, but they were outlined in the initial presentation, and the reasons for the increases were just reiterated. So we'll bring the rates forward for the final meeting for ratification. With sewer, we had a very thorough presentation last week from Ms. Chen, and council approved a new rate structure for sewer. What that will do is help to move the arrow in the upper direction in terms of our accumulated surplus, but of course we could have accomplished that simply with a user rate increase, and the reasons for not just doing that were thoroughly explained, and council approved the recommendations. So what we're moving to now is over the course of the next 4 years, a better alignment between our operating cost structure and our user fee revenues, just like we now have in water. And we are also, similar to the water utility, we are going to be matching up our infrastructure levy that we collect each year to the amount we set aside in reserve. And again, the rates will be brought forward at the next meeting for ratification. So with that rate structure being approved, I can fill out the remainder of this table that was partially completed at the last meeting. So we're looking at the average single-family dwelling with full water, sewer, and garbage service at a consumption level of 6,500 gallons. The quarterly utility bill will increase by just over $9 from last year. And for the average commercial account, it'll be a few cents more than that at just under $10 for the year, per quarter, I should say. So what is next? Council direction from tonight will be built into a second draft of the financial plan. There have been a lot of referrals to staff tonight for additional information at that meeting. So the second draft will not be as complete as it typically is because there are still a lot of decisions left to make. And at that time, council will have plenty of opportunities to make those final decisions, with the goal of approving the budget on the March 16th third meeting. And once the budget is approved, whether it's on that night or at a subsequent meeting, that'll be considered final, and the tax rates and financial plan bylaw will be prepared on what's been approved here. As always, staff are available between now and then to answer additional questions. But we have a lot of work ahead of us at the staff level to respond to everything that council directed us to do tonight, and we will do our best to bring a good product forward. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much, Mr. Hissick, for both your presentation and the organized fashion that you walked us through budget deliberations this evening. I want to take, on behalf of council, thank all staff in attendance this evening, not only for your work in preparing the budget, but in taking our questions this evening, and some of them were on the fly. We apologize. We do try to ask in advance, but sometimes one member brings up something and another has an idea, and we certainly appreciate the responses. Thank you very much. Look for a motion to adjourn. Moved and seconded. We are adjourned. Thank you.